Thank you, Andrew. We are ready. All right, Lindsay, we are good to go.
All right. Welcome to the September 9th, 2021 meeting of the BAR Small Virtual Meeting. My name is Lindsay Van Slambrook. The other board members present this afternoon are Bill Huey, Glenn Gardner, Julia Martin, and Fillmore Wilson. City staff present this afternoon are Kim Lavin, BARS Administrator. The order of today's meeting will be as follows. We'll start with an introduction and overview of the project given by city staff to the board and for the public. This will be followed by an applicant presentation, which is a 10-minute time limit. Any and all presenters should clearly state their name first and last for the record, and anyone speaking on behalf of the project, this includes owners, developers, designers, consultants, etc., should speak during this time rather than during public comment. By ordinance, the board can ask questions of the applicant at any time. By custom, we do so on the heels of the applicant's presentation. This will be followed by a period of public comment. If you are speaking as a member of the public, please again state your name first and last clearly for the record. Public comment will be followed by city staff comments and recommendations. Following public comment and staff recommendations, we'll have a 5-minute period of applicant response. The purpose of this is to respond or clarify anything that was raised during public comment or by the staff recommendations. This is not an opportunity to reopen your presentation. The applicant response period will be followed by board discussion and a vote. At this time, the applicant presentation is closed. The applicant may clarify inaccurate information or respond to a question asked by a board member by raising their hand. Not physically, but you all know there's a little button you can do so. Please be aware that our operating procedure will be changing upon the return to in-person meetings, the date of which has yet to be determined. Once we return to in-person meetings, we will discontinue the use of Zoom, but continue live stream on our City of Charleston YouTube channel. The public may speak in person at the meeting or provide written comments in advance. The deadline to submit written comments will be at 12 p.m. on the day prior to the meeting. Written comments will be provided to the board members in advance of the meeting and acknowledged by myself, the chair, during each agenda item. Please refer to each meeting's agenda for updates on this and changes to our operating procedures as we move towards returning to in-person meetings. Item number 1, 12 King Street has been deferred by the applicant, and item number 3 has also been deferred by the applicant. Finally, please limit your comments to architecture only. Comments related to zoning, such as parking, traffic, lot coverage, and livability concerns are not within the purview of this board and will not be heard here. Now, Kim, if you will give us some virtual meeting protocol.
Thanks, Lindsay. Staff will control the PowerPoint presentation that includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with the submittal requirements. Applicants simply need to ask staff to advance to the next slide during your presentation. Applicants, staff, and board members are required to give their name whenever speaking. Video and microphone has been disabled for all attendees. Attendees, not board members or staff, will only be given the capability to speak when they're called on during the public comment period. The chat and the Q&A functions have been disabled for everyone. Public comment, the applicant and all team members and the public have been required to register, indicate the project they wish to comment on, and submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Just as in an in-person meeting, all applications heard today are part of a public meeting format. If you've registered and will speak during the public comment portion of the meeting, you'll need to state your name and address for the record. Those members of the public that have registered will be called on in order by project. Staff will call on the registered members of the public to speak for each project. Unregistered members of the public who raise their hand will not be called on. For the board members will be polled by the chairperson for comments for their vote on a motion. Each member, when voting, should respond yea in favor or nay not in favor. The chair shall reread the motion verbatim, and the board member making the motion should correct the chair if he has not reread the motion accurately. If a board member needs to recuse, he or she will be temporarily removed from the meeting and placed back into the meeting at the start of the next agenda item. If the board needs to go into an executive session, they will call into a separate conference line, and all video and audio on Zoom will be temporarily turned off until they're ready to return to the regular meeting. The results and staff comments will be posted on the city website at www.charleston-sc.gov/PAR. And these proceedings are being recorded and broadcast to the City of Charleston's YouTube channel.
Thank you, Kim. Agenda item number 1 has been deferred by the applicant. So we are on agenda item number 2, 175.5 Wentworth Street.
175.5 Wentworth Street is requesting conceptual approval to replace turn metal roof with architectural shingles. The building's a category 3 and it's in the Charleston Village neighborhood and was built in 1887 in the Old Historic District. Here's just a little context for you guys to familiarize yourself with the property. It's on the south side of Wentworth between Gadsden and Ashley. And here's some existing site photos. See, it has the bay, the turn metal on the bay as well. Some aerials looking east on Wentworth and looking west on Wentworth. And some sandboard maps from 1902 and 1944. And with that said, if the applicant wants to take it from here. Mr. Benjamin, if you are here, can you raise your hand, please?
Oh, there we go.
Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can.
Yes.
All right, thank you. So this is Scott Benjamin. I have the pleasure and the challenge of now being responsible for a historic home in the Charleston neighborhood. My stepmother, Linda Benjamin, is officially the owner, but I will be living in and managing the property for however long. I was aware of multiple moisture issues on the property when we made an offer, and quickly had somebody come out to take a look at the roof and see what we could do. It looks like it has been repainted, resealed multiple times, but there is ongoing active leaking in at least 2 locations upstairs. And I believe there's also water tracking into the outside walls in at least 1 location in the downstairs flat where I am residing. We got estimates for replacement of the roof as opposed, well, we got estimates for resealing, replacing with asphalt, shingles with 50-year warranty or 50-year lifespan, and with metal. Based on the neighborhood and the fact that this roof, at least the upper portion of the roof, is not at all visible really from street level, and there are multiple houses in the neighborhood with asphalt shingles, we are hoping to get approval for doing the project with asphalt on the uppermost portion of the roof, but keeping the metal on the facade and over the entryway to the lower piazza. The cost differential is roughly 50%, which allows the opportunity to still have some budgeting for other projects on the property that need to be taken care of, not the least of which is a roughly $4,000 gas leak repair undergoing right now as we speak. So I would like to do copper or whatever metal the board would choose for the two front windows and the area over the entry to the lower piazza, and asphalt for the uppermost portion of the roof. That's basically it.
Thank you, Mr. Benjamin. Board members, do you have any questions for Mr. Benjamin? All right. Kim, we'll move on to public comment.
Thank you. We have Anna Catherine Carroll.
Thank you, Kim. This is Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston, and the Preservation Society is opposed to this request. The turn metal roof is a character-defining feature of this house, and replacement with architectural shingles would constitute a major and incompatible visual change. Based on the application materials submitted, the roof appears to be in salvageable condition largely. In keeping with the Secretary of the Interior standards, which advise deteriorated historic features be repaired rather than replaced, we ask the board to deny this request in favor of selective repair and recoating as needed. Thank you.
Thank you. And we also have April Wood from Historic Charleston Foundation.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the request for conceptual approval to replace turn metal roof with architectural shingles at 175.5 Wentworth. While we understand that the existing turn metal roof is at the end of its service life, we are opposed to the change in roofing material. The Secretary of the Interior standards state that historic features shall be repaired rather than replaced. When the severity of deterioration requires replacement of a distinctive feature, the new feature shall match the old in design, color, texture, and other visual qualities, and where possible, materials. This request to change roofing materials does not conform to the Secretary of the Interior standards. A standing seam roof, metal roof is historically appropriate for this historic 1887 structure. While architectural shingles are less expensive, this material was not traditionally used on Charleston's historic buildings. Changing the roof material will change the historic character of the house and downgrade its historic integrity. It is our recommendation that the applicant explore coating the roof with Hyder stock. If repair is not feasible, we recommend replacement with a new roof using traditionally detailed hand-crimped seams and ridge. Because turn metal is not readily available, we recommend either using galvalume or copper or similar product that can be hand worked. For the area over the bay and the door, we believe this area should be a painted hand crimped material, potentially galvalume. I'll defer to the board on that. We applaud the applicant's good stewardship of this historic house, but we respectfully recommend denial of this application to replace the turn metal roof with architectural shingles. Thank you.
Thank you, April. Kim, the only other public comment I see is actually from Mr. Benjamin. And I don't see anything else for this particular agenda item.
We have another one from the Charleston neighborhood. Let's see if I can find it.
Oh,
Yeah. HVA.
oh, that's not 157 Wentworth, which is not okay. All right, we have,
175.
I think it's just a typo here.
Okay.
We have a letter from the Charleston Village Association to the BAR Small. Dear members of BARS, we write to you today on behalf of the Charleston Village Association to express our opposition to the removal of the historic turn roof now in place at 157 Wentworth Street, which I believe should be 175.5, and its replacement by architectural shingles. We respectfully encourage the board to maintain its longstanding policy of opposing changes to the fabric of the city's roofscape, such as the one proposed here. Replacement in kind or repair of this historic roof is not only the best solution for sustainable, enduring cladding for the roof of this house, replacement in kind or repair is also the right course to preserving the building's historic character. Sincerely, for the Charleston Village Association, Carter L. Hudgens at 70 Bull Street. And
That's all.
okay, Kim, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Sure, thank you. The historic turn metal roof should be repaired as necessary rather than replaced, as stated in the Charleston Principles and Secretary of the Interior Standards. Repairing the roof is the best option to preserve the historic integrity of the building. A replacement in like kind would be suitable in the case that the roof is found irreparable. Asphalt shingles are not an appropriate replacement material in the historic districts of Charleston, so the staff's recommending denial for architectural shingles. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. Benjamin, would you like to respond or clarify anything raised during public comment or in the staff comments and recommendations? And Mr. Benjamin, you're on mute.
So I figured this was going to be kind of an uphill discussion. Included in my presentation, there are photographs of several houses on this block that have architectural shingles. And I'm wondering why those houses were able to get architectural shingles. I'm assuming at one point they were all metal. So how could they be switched over to shingle and my request be denied? Those are all on just this one block of Wentworth that those photos were taken of houses of my neighbors.
Mr. Benjamin, I'm not personally aware of the history of those particular homes, but I'm sure that if you research or spoke to Preservation Society or Historic Charleston Foundation, they may have some more history on those houses as to how those roofs were replaced.
And then I guess the one other thing that I would say is the most upper portion of this roof is really not visible other than from the air. So I don't believe that we are taking anything away from the architectural features of the home or the neighborhood by replacing the uppermost portion with asphalt, which you really can't see from the street.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Benjamin. Did you have any other comments or clarifications?
No, that's it. If it ultimately does get denied, I would like some specific information about what would be the best and most long-lasting recoating materials that I could use as opposed to full replacement.
Okay, and I'll volunteer Preservation Society and Historic Charleston. I know they're a wealth of knowledge on that. So
Okay, thank you.
all right, we'll move into board discussion and a vote at this point.
I laid off Fillmore Wilson. I went by and took a look at the roof. It is not terribly visible, but from certain angles and down the street, it is somewhat visible. I think the edge of the roof, which is typical of a roof, metal roof of this period, is folded over the edge and face nailed, and there certainly is deterioration there. The rest of the roof, of course, I could only look at the photographs, and parts of it seem to be in reasonable condition. It's been Silaflexed or hydrostopped at least once, maybe multiple times. But I really can't comment on its repairability because it certainly would require more in-depth investigation. But at least a good bit of it looks like it would be, it probably could stand another another coating and extend its life. And the edge issue is repairable in situ. There's a method for repairing the deteriorated edge, which may be where some of the water is getting into the walls. And so under those conditions, I would agree with staff's comments.
Thanks, Fillmore. I really don't have anything to add to what Fillmore and staff and the public have said, other than I did drive by as well, and you definitely can see the front half of the roof from the street. So
Same, and I sorry, I was attempting, kind of anticipating where the discussion would go. I was trying to figure out how, is there a piece of this roof that you could replace with a different, more modern material? But the way it has been altered and changed over time, which, the current owner can't necessarily help and we can't help, I guess it appears that at one point it may have had internal gutters. And so that's why it may be holding a little bit of water on the edges if you see in the photo that's up on Zoom right now. I think, does anybody disagree with me, Fillmore? Does that seem reasonable?
It still has internal gutters.
Okay. So, that's obviously creating a little bit of a challenge, but I'm not seeing any way, for a reasonable change of material on the back of the house. And I don't know that would make a significant difference, but I will say that having had, 3 or 4 of these roofs myself, there are several very good companies in town, whose job normally is to try to save the roof and not recommend removing it. And hopefully you can get some good advice from 1 or 2 of them with regard to repair, because a lot of times when the average person would say, oh, this roof is shot, there are ways to work with and repair these roofs and get 10, 20, however many more years out of them without a wholesale replacement.
I can just go ahead, and I think that all that input is probably helpful for the applicant, but I can go ahead and make a motion for denial for replacement of the turn metal roof.
We have a motion on the floor for denial of replacement of the turn metal roof. Do I have a second?
We can say with staff comments. I'm sorry, Lindsay.
With staff comments.
Yeah, I would. So Julia, essentially, its denial is submitted for shingle, correct?
Yes.
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Glenn. I'll put it to a vote. Bill?
Yay in favor.
Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
Julia?
Yay in favor.
Glenn?
Yay in favor.
The chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Benjamin.
Can I ask one quick question?
Yes.
So do I have to get approval for the coating that I use from you guys, or can I just get it resurfaced?
You will need to submit another VAR application, just letting us know what kind of sealant or coating you're going to use.
Okay. Do I have to pay another $300 to do that?
No, sir, you don't.
Okay, thanks a lot. All right, appreciate y'all's time.
Thanks.
Benjamin. Okay, agenda item number 348 Bull Street has been deferred by the applicant, and we are at agenda item number 4, 7 Smith Street. Tim, you will give us an introduction and overview, please.
Thanks, Lindsay. I will. 7 Smith Street is requesting conceptual approval for a new 2-story addition to the rear. In addition to accessory building to allow a 1-car garage and hardscaping, including a pool at rear. The building isn't rated in the Charleston Village neighborhood, was built in 1940 in the old and historic district. And again, here's an aerial just for your familiarization with the property. It's on the west side of Smith Street, just north of Queen. And here are some existing site images. This is the south wall where the addition will be most visible. And looking north on Smith Street and looking south toward Queen. Some same board maps. And previous motion on July 22nd was approval of addition to accessory building and hardscaping at rear, deferral of addition to main house for restudy, providing a recessed hyphen to delineate the addition, and any addition to be recessed in plane from the sidewall of the existing house. And with all that said, if Mr. Gottschalk wants to take it from here, you have the floor.
Mr. Gottschalk, you're on mute.
There we go. Sorry. Thank you. So good evening. Thank you again for being here this evening. Yes, and so we are here to present a revised design for this house. At the previous meeting in July, we did receive approval for the hardscape and pool and the garage addition, and there was quite a bit of discussion on the design of the two-story rear addition to this house. And I'd just like to respond to the comments, just kind of get right to the heart of that matter and get to our response to those comments. I think pages, let's see, if we go to, Kim, if you can pull up sheet A7. There we go. Okay, so this, so I'll start here and make my comments, and then if we need to look at the other elevations, we'll do that as well too. So let's see. So you can see the top was the previous front elevation that you saw in July. The bottom is the elevation with the revised addition to it, and then Kim, if I could ask you to maybe go one more sheet to A7.1. I think this is going to be the most helpful view for the project. So the approach was to revise the addition to maintain the identity of the main house by creating a hyphen, which is one of the comments made by the board, in order to delineate the addition from the primary structure. Which we have done, which does preserve the back left corner of the house, and keeps that with a full identity, and then to scale back the height and details of the addition to make a more subordinate relationship to the original house. So as a result, the addition, the massing of the addition is more subdued. The height of the elevator element has been eliminated, and the eave line is lower than the main house. This approach has the desired effect of the addition being minimally visible from the street, as the side porch effectively blocks the line of sight from the street or sidewalk. And this is indicated on the new left elevation on sheet A7.1. There's a 6 foot tall figure standing on the sidewalk. His line of sight by the side porch, 16 side porch, effectively, does not allow you to see the height of the addition from the street. Now, we looked at numerous ways to incorporate. So the big issue is the width of the addition, and we looked at numerous ways to incorporate the elevator into a design that kept the addition from being wider than the original house. We had some restrictions here, though. The original house design has a strong central hall element to it. And Kim, perhaps if we could go back to sheet A5. as you can see that it's a center hall design, which is a very strong element that runs through this house. And it provides the main corridor for views through the house and for circulation. And that's one thing that we wanted to preserve, that spine through the house by, and the solution here was to incorporate a porch which continues that 8-foot wide central hall element that leads out into the backyard, so that the air and light through the house is maintained. What that means, though, is then the addition to the left of the house to maintain in that same module is only 14 feet wide. And to impose an elevator shaft within this 14 feet would essentially pinch and divide that available space so as to be impractical for other use. So we ended up with a minimal intrusion of 3 feet wider than the original house. But we're asking the BAR to reconsider this requirement for the following reasons. One, the hyphen requested by the BAR has been created. The massing of the addition has been reduced, creating a much more subordinate design. The side porch effectively blocks the view of the addition from the street. The addition is over 70 feet back from the front property line. And the house is a non-rated structure, built on a street that includes a variety of architectural styles and footprints. So we feel that the changes made to the design of the addition do address the comments made at the last meeting, and that the width of the addition would not preclude this design from being approved for the reasons listed above. So again, we thank you for the opportunity to present this to you. I would be happy to address any questions, and we would ask for conceptual approval in order to proceed to the next level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gottschalk. Board members, do you have any questions for the applicant? Kim, I have one clarifying question. Is this just for conceptual approval of this 2-story addition? Did we approve?
Yes,
The hard.
that's correct.
Okay. All right. Well, then let's move on to public comment if we have no board questions.
We have Anna Catherine Carroll from Preservation Society.
Thank you. Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. In keeping with our comments presented at the previous review, the Preservation Society maintains that the proposed addition should be more directly situated behind the main house, as well as better subordinated and differentiated. Specifically, the eave line of the addition should be lower than that of the main house. While we appreciate the elimination of the false chimney addition, we ask that the addition be better concealed per the board's previous directive that the addition be recessed in plane from the side wall of the main house. Given the level of restudy needed, we encourage the board to maintain its previous position and defer this request. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna Catherine.
We also have John Rhodes, but I believe he's the property owner. Mr. Gottschalk, do you know if he's?
Yes, John Rhodes is the property owner.
Is he planning on speaking?
I don't know. He is actually in an airport right now, so I'm not sure what his schedule is.
Okay, he registered to speak, so I just wanted to make sure to include him.
Can you see him at that
That's it.
list? I don't.
Pardon me?
Okay. All right. And I don't see anyone else from the public speaking. Do I have that right, Kim?
That's correct.
All right. Well, Kim, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Thank you. The board's motion was pretty clear on July 22nd, was for the addition to be, quote, recessed in plan from the sidewall of the existing house. The addition is inadequately recessed as it remains extended beyond the plane of the existing house. And so staff's recommending deferral for restudy. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. Gottschalk, did you want to respond or clarify anything raised during the public comment or the staff comment?
I think the only comment that caught my attention was there was a a comment made by Anna Carroll that the eave of the addition should be lower than the existing house, and it is. Maybe it just wasn't clear on the drawings, but the eave of the two-story addition, if you look on the new left elevation, the bottom down there, our eave lines are 18 inches or so lower than the main house. I just want to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gottschalk. All right, we'll move into board discussion and a vote.
This is Bill. I'll go ahead and jump in since I made that last motion last time. I do appreciate the elimination of that chimney element, and to the point that Gov just made, the lowering of the eave height subordinate to the house and introduction of a hyphenated element. I think all those are positive. I think it's just simply that wall plane and getting that wall plane back. And I believe I'd even mentioned maybe it could just be maybe only a corner board subordinate to the wall plane of the main house. It might involve, in looking at your plan, maybe some of that daylight activity changing, to your point about access to the house, but I'm hoping maybe in the addition, if it slides over there, you might be able to maybe introduce some light or glass even down at the end of the addition that would still at least give that view through impression of light through the house. So I think that's, as far as the height of what I'm seeing on the elevations, the subordination, I believe all that's been done in a good way. I think it's just simply the wall plane issue and sliding the addition in to accommodate that. That's really my only point. So I would agree with the staff's comments to that end.
Okay, I'll chime in. I hear you, Bill, on that, and hear staff. Initially, when I looked at this, I was pretty receptive and, like you, appreciated the removal of the chimney and the introduction of a hyphen. I would take issue with a couple of Mr. Gottschalk's sort of justifications. One, that the side porch hides this addition protrusion, which you can see through the porch, not just over the porch. And I don't think there's a 6-foot wall at the sidewalk. I think personally, I don't mind the fact that it protrudes a little bit beyond the plane, but of the existing house, but I might be alone in that position. The one thing that I was going to point out, if it does stay where it is that the eave return at that projection is pretty awkward and pretty noticeable. It's kind of like one of those pork chop eave things. Go back one, Kim. There. So if this were going to stay in this location of the addition, I would suggest maybe hipping that little piece of the roof back toward the main eave. But we'll just see where it lands.
This is Bill again. Julia, just a quick question. So you're okay really then where it's shown? It's just that maybe modifying some of those details? Is that?
I am. I think there are examples of additions south of Broad and all over that do extend a little bit when they're that far back on the property. So that's how I feel, but I totally respect others' viewpoints if they differ.
Okay. Yeah, I think that hyphen does help quite a bit. This is a pretty decent hyphen, decent width and depth of hyphen. So that is a good point that you're making there. So I didn't necessarily take that into account. I appreciate that.
It's Glenn. I agree with most of what Julia has pointed out, including the detail of that sort of eave or that return. I think there's enough hyphen that I can become comfortable with it extending beyond the plane of the house, especially just with the age of what we're talking about here. I'm a little wary of how tight it's getting back there between the garage building and the addition. I mean, that's going to become a really tight corridor between a two-story addition and the garage building. It's just I'm not sure how you end up treating that other than it just all getting paved, because it's tight. With and by that I mean with multiple sets of stairs and the elevator shaft, stairs off the back porch. There's just a lot going on in a tight area back there.
Fillmore here. I don't think I have anything to add to your point, Bill. I mean, my druthers would be to see that addition pulled into the plane of the original building, but it is separated. And to Julia's point, where it is, and I drove by again and looked at it. I actually still, I think, have a little more apprehension about the front-facing garage doors, which are highly visible, and that little tiny corridor there, the way the garage is now squeezed against the house, than I actually do with the extension beyond the plane of the main house. So I'm kind of a Julian on this, I think.
Okay, yeah, I definitely see y'all's point. I think the hyphen helps quite a bit, and then I think that point Julia made about that roof line would be even helping even more. So I can get on board with that too.
And I think in the drawing, that roof line looks particularly awkward. I think in sort of final detailing, it could be sorted out.
This was a preliminary.
This
I
is
think conceptual.
Conceptual.
Is this on is there a site plan showing the updated kind of the big picture of all of this if you were to flip back?
Mm-hmm. There you go.
And Bill, this is conceptual approval just for the new two-story addition. So we
Okay.
already approved the hardscaping, the addition to the existing accessory building to allow one-car garage.
Okay. Thank you, Lindsay.
The only other thing I might mention is that the level of detail and the clarification of materials proposed and all that is really loose at this point. So it would need to be tightened up for preliminary or final review.
Yeah, and to that point, Julia, I think that, I mean, depending on how the vote today is, I think the site plan needs to be clarified with walkways, pathways. There's, you add this pool kind of wedged back there with tight property lines. I think we need to understand what is the full hardscape plan and how is this all working. This is a low area of town, and I think it's important to allow somewhere for water to get into the ground, especially after a morning like today. I'm anticipating that a lot more of this could end up being hardscaped and lot coverage just based on all the activities and the stairwells and the landings and the pool. I think all of that needs to be comprehensively added to a plan.
I would agree. Did I hear that the hardscaping was already approved somehow? I don't know.
We approved the pool and the driveway, I thought.
Kim, I don't know if you're able to pull up the level of detail that we approved on the last application.
When I do, that messes me up and I have to.
Oh, I
Have
can
to start the
say
meeting
by
over.
memory.
Yeah.
I could say by memory, this is Bill again. I'm pretty confident that that motion was for approval of the ancillary buildings and the hardscaping and pool. But I believe, Glenn, to your point, this is a new footprint depicted, albeit modified to some degree, but it is a new footprint. So the hardscaping potentially still could be subject to at least further development and review. I would think that's a reasonable request and requirement.
Yeah, I just think there is some clarification needed as to how all of this, how it all ties together. I mean, there are a lot of presumptive walkways and hardscape that are not shown on this plan up on the screen at the moment.
So this is the last July meeting, and I think that hardscaping was a general term for pool.
The pool.
Okay.
Do you want to stay at the helm here, Bill? You got something brewing in your head?
Oh, no, I was just going to further it on down. Probably the same thing you were going to do, Julia. I can do it or you can do it.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to go ahead and make a motion for conceptual approval with a board requirement that the returning roof at the addition be in hip form rather than a truncated, I guess, gable or pork chop form, and that a plan showing and depicting the extent of hardscaping and landscaping, being green space, be provided for the next review. I think I'll go ahead and leave it in the board review purview with my motion, just simply because of that. I think Glenn sounds like he wants to get eyes on that. So I would just leave it at that. So conceptual approval with that comment about the roof return and the requirement to return with a hardscape / call it greenscape or landscape plan to show the extent of green space.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval with two board comments. First, that the return roof at the addition be in hip form rather than the current pork chop form, and also that the applicant submit a plan depicting the hardscape and the green or landscape plan, and that be submitted with the next round of review. Do I have that right, Bill?
Yes.
I can second that.
Julia. I will put it to a vote now. Glenn?
Yay in favor?
Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yay in favor.
Julia?
Yay in favor.
And the chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Gottschalk.
Thank you all very much. And I would agree with the comments on the hardscaping. You know, it was just difficult to go to a lot of detail until we got through this stage, and we're happy to provide that information. Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, agenda item number 5, 283 East Bay Street.
Madam Chairman, I believe I'm going to be recusing on this item. So if you cut me off, Kim, if you send me a text if I'm not back or something, somebody send me a text so I don't hold you guys up. Thank you.
Don't go turn the TV on. This won't last forever.
Go eat
I
dinner.
understand. I was just going to mute this.
All right. 283 East Bay Street is requesting final approval for wholesale window replacement. The building's a category 2 in the Ansonboro neighborhood and was built in 1840 in the old and historic district. Just an aerial image. To familiarize yourself, it's between Anson and on the corner of East Bay, Hazel Street. And here's some existing site photos. Looking down the driveway and across Hazel Street. And looking north on East Bay and south. Looking west on Hazel. There's some Sanborn maps from 1888 and 1944, shows the property largely unchanged. And with that, we have Miss Grace Chapin on the line. Ms. Chapin, if you would like to take it from here.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, thank you. Yep. So just to give you a little bit of a backstory, on August 9th, we realized that the ceiling on the second floor interior was collapsing. The original plaster was falling through, and upon just initial evaluation, we realized that the window sashes, sills, mullions, and all associated parts of the existing windows on all three elevations, the east elevation, north elevation, and west elevation, were completely rotten through, in our opinion, in like irreparable fashion. So we have performed an all test, which is what I sent you. You can see in terms of the ceiling damage that was immediately noticeable, pages 7, 45, 47, and 48.
Grace, should I skip that way?
Yep, I just, if it's possible, I wanted you to see what we saw originally. Thank you.
I'm
Sorry,
sorry, my
it's a
pages
long
aren't
document. No, I'm sorry.
I'm getting close.
Right, there's a good example. And if I think the next 3 slides, you can see a little bit more specific photos. So you can see there's original plaster there. The windows, not only above it, but when we performed the all test, all of the 23 windows in this house, they all went through them like a knife through butter. And the previous owner had clearly painted these windows multiple times with exterior paint to kind of hide this issue. But when we noticed associated rot coming through the exterior sills and sashes, it was clearly evident on the interior as well, specifically again with the window trim. So what we are asking the BAR is to let us replace these exterior windows with exact historic replicas of what is there right now. There'll be 9/9 windows. I sent you the quote from MW Millwork with the specifics. Obviously, the only difference is they'll be made out of sapele, right? Which we know is, a more water resistant, kind of the current standard. As well as the new windows will be installed with copper pans and have a slightly sloped sill, which the original windows did not have. Additionally, when we did this evaluation, we realized that someone, within the past few owners had put a fiberglass material on top of the exterior sills. We're assuming they did that in order to show signs of damage, but that caused further issues with this water coming in through the north elevation, east and west elevation. Obviously, there's no fascia, gutters. There's parapet walls on either side of the building. So the water has been directly going in through these exterior windows and causing significant damage to the original plaster. You can see in that photo, the original heart pine flooring, which is, shown extensive damage. And at this point, it's a livability concern for the owner because he can't live there right now. And I guess from a perspective of the BAR, the Historic Charleston Foundation and the Preservation Society, our intention and what we're asking for is just to replace these with no aesthetic changes to what's there currently. They will, for all intent and purposes, look exactly the same as what you see now from the outside. However, they'll actually be functional and they won't be completely rotten. So we just asked the BAR to allow us, to order these windows. And as you know, with the current lead times, it'll take 16 weeks for us to even get these windows, but we're waiting on your approval and your opinions in order to do that. So that's all from me for now.
Lindsay, you're on mute.
Thank you, Julia. Do any board members have any questions for Ms. Chapin?
Fillmore Wilson here. I have a couple of questions. You said that the new windows would have copper pans. That means that you're replacing the sills as well as the sash.
Yes, sir. The sills, which appear to be original, don't have any slope to them, which has also exacerbated the problem. So when we replace the jambs, the sashes, and the sills, we were going to put copper pans in them just to make sure that they last for another 200 years.
Okay, so your intention, I noticed on the MW Millworks paperwork, it appeared that except for, I think, one window, that only the sash were being replaced. Is that incorrect? Is the entire window unit, jambs, casing, sills are to be replaced?
That is incorrect in terms of the fact that we have a separate quote, which I apologize, I sent a Dropbox to the BAR, but I know it probably didn't go through because it was earlier. But we have another subcontractor who will be doing the exterior sills, who has done this historic work for us before.
And what about the jambs? If the original sills, the jam legs are most likely mortised into those original sills, and so I'm trying to figure out how the process is going to go with.
Right. So our worst case scenario is we order the windows and we take out the existing windows, and the jambs will most likely need to be replaced, which may coincide with a little bit of brick repointing, the copper pans. But yes, it's unfortunately one of these things where from what we see, we believe that will need to happen. And we have the quotes, with the client to do so. But our intention obviously is if we're going to do all this, we want to do it properly all at the same time, especially considering the power lines shown there. And, we have to de-energize the power lines. And so to answer your question, we don't particularly know until we open up the windows, but we will do it all at the same time.
Right. And I fully understand and agree that you won't know the extent of the existing damage to the jambs. But the application is, I'm trying to exactly understand the application, and that is, it appeared that the application was for maybe one entire window replacement, and then 100% of the sash replacement. And then I think, without looking back at the paperwork, I think there may have been a sill on there, but the application didn't indicate that all of the entire window units were to be replaced. But to put copper pans in, the window units are going to have to come out, including the jambs and the casing.
Absolutely.
And interior and exterior, and the at the very least the sills are gonna have to come out. You might save the jam legs, but you'd have to cut the tendons off, I think, to get the sills out. I'm just trying to understand exactly what we're being asked to approve here. That's all. Just clarify.
Yep. I'm asking to approve the replacement of the windows, which is certainly the sashes, and the sills as well, because the sills are not properly sloped, which is one of many things causing this interior damage.
Right.
But again, in terms of the jambs and the associated work, we won't know for sure until we open up the window. But with that being said, we'll be in full communication with the BAR. And again, none of that will be visible. However, we don't want to have to replace anything more than we need to. But if we're going to go ahead and do this, we're going to do it properly with the copper pans, with the lintels, with the properly sloped sills. So I'm currently asking for the sashes and the sills to be replaced in kind with exact replicas, but just replacing them a little bit better than currently.
Okay. And so I'm sorry to keep asking questions, but you're going to replace lintels now. I'm assuming you mean the wood lintels above the windows, the original wood lintels, because I don't believe that house has steel lintels.
We don't think so either. Again, we won't know until we open it up. We don't want to do that. We don't think they're there either. But our intention is to make these windows last another 200 years and do them properly.
I understand. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other board questions at this time? All right, we'll move on to public comment.
Yep, Anna Catherine Carroll speaking.
Thank you. This is Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We really appreciate the level of documentation demonstrated in this application. However, per the Secretary of the Interior Standards guidance to replace only what cannot be feasibly repaired, we do not feel wholesale window replacement is warranted. We encourage retention of as much historic material as possible and working to rehabilitate and selectively replace any window elements that cannot be repaired. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna Catherine. Kim, do we have it?
And that is all for public comment.
All right, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Sure will.
Can I just make a quick comment that we did try to repair one of the windows with Abitron. We used 2 coats of it, and that still failed the all test. And the majority of these windows are rotten completely through. And so repairing. Sorry about that. Yes, I mean, we're just concerned that they may not appear via the photos to be as bad as they actually are, but in our professional opinion, they're all the sashes are rotted completely through.
Okay, I'll go ahead with preservation staff's comments. We are too guided by the Secretary of the Interior Standards to repair where possible and replace only when absolutely necessary. We feel that the applicant has provided a basic assessment of the windows, many of which appear to be in reparable condition. A full and thorough conditions assessment should be assembled to delineate the repair or selective replacement of each sash. Staff's recommending deferral for further details and final review by staff.
Thank you, Kim. And Ms. Chapin, you have a period now to respond or clarify to anything raised in the public comment or by the staff comments.
Well, I would be more than happy to meet anyone on site and show them in person what's going on with these windows. And again, the livability issue that's going on, where these windows are causing ceilings to collapse, floors to cup, they're causing humidity issues inside the house. And so for us, it's a livability concern, as well as making the BAR and everyone else, happy with what we replaced them with. But it's somewhat urgent in the fact that the client can't currently live there due to these issues. And also the damage that's going on from an interior perspective, where the original plaster molding is getting damp by the day. The original heart pine flooring is getting water damage by the day. So it's somewhat urgent from our perspective to at least figure out with you guys specifically which windows you will allow us to replace.
Thank you, Ms. Chapin.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move into board discussion and a vote at this time.
As we start this, I just have one late breaking question for the applicant. Were you saying that all of this was sort of just noticed like suddenly recently? Is that like it wasn't apparent until very recently that they were all
Well, there were
problems?
when we got brought onto this, we realized that there were long-standing signs of this happening. Of course, as a contractor, we noticed these things. But yes, the ceiling collapsed on August 9th, which is at that point we went upstairs and started doing all this kind of documentation and information to be able to be at the PAR meeting. Thank you.
Awesome. I think this is a category 2 house, and so yeah, I tend to really respect anything that Fillmore says about these issues. It does appear that some of the windows are not original, not necessarily sensitive replacements, so I think it's fine to consider replacing those. With regard to the ones that probably are original, it may well be true that some of them have reached the end of their lifespan and need to be replaced. I'd hope that they would be carefully inventoried and, individually assessed to see if even the sash could be incorporated into the new solution. And hopefully some of the windows that are protected under the Piazza would be able to be retained, just so there's some of that continuity of the historic fabric. But I guess I would trust staff to follow up on that personally, and I would like to hear Fillmore and everybody else's ultimate take on this as well.
I am. What concerns me is certainly a number of the sash are going to need to be replaced. I think there's evidence in the photograph that some of them are probably beyond repair. I think some of them are probably not beyond repair. There's always a tug of war here. Realistically, it's cheaper to make a new sash than to repair an old one. It's gotten to the point, clearly I went around and looked as closely as I could at these from the street. 100% of the windows, need to be reglazed. The putty is failing almost universally. And it's gotten to the point where it's almost cheaper to replace a sash than to reglaze one. And by reglazing, I don't mean replacing the historic glass. I mean just the putty. It's a very labor-intensive job, particularly if it's gone a long time without appropriate maintenance. And so I'm certainly sympathetic to the fact that these windows are causing a lot of problems, and that there are conditions here that require replacement. My concern about a wholesale approval of this application is there seems clearly they do not know it's impossible to know the condition of the window jambs until they pull the sash and get a look at them, or the casing for that matter. But I think a lot of the casing is old, very possibly original to the house. They're gunstop windows, they're unbalanced. So I think the majority of these windows are early. I agree with Julia that the ones under cover are likely to be in much better condition and therefore probably are salvageable. I would be reluctant to give wholesale approval to simply replacing windows because that's a little ill-defined here. Honestly, from a very practical standpoint, the way to fix this is to pull all those windows out wholesale and replace them: jamb, sill, casing, interior trim. That's sort of the cleanest and in many respects maybe the least expensive way to do this, but I do not believe it is the way that we should approach historic material in a category 2 house. And so I think this entire operation needs to be better defined and assessed as it moves forward. I certainly, have complete trust in staff being able to do that, but I'm not comfortable in sort of a board approval of wholesale replacement of windows, particularly when the limit to that is not well defined.
So would it be appropriate if I just went ahead and made a motion for staff's recommendation for deferral for further details?
Do you mind if I make one more quick comment, if that's possible? Is that I do agree to a certain extent what he said. If you see pages 19 to 27, those are the windows. There's 4 windows under the piazza on the second and first floor. And those, as he said, are not in as bad of condition as the ones on the east, north, and west elevation. So we would certainly be open to the idea of not replacing those windows southern facing under the piazza, if that was a compromise we could all make.
Okay, and I think that would fall under the heading of things that can be negotiated with staff. If we make this motion for deferral for further details and final review by staff with the staff comment provided.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for deferral for further details and final review by staff with staff comments. Do I have a second?
Second, Fillmore.
All right, I'll put the motion to a vote. Glenn,
Yay in favor.
Julia,
Yay in favor.
Fillmore.
Yay in favor.
Chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Chapin.
Thank you all.
All right, we need to bring Bill back in. There he is. All right. Moving on to agenda item number 6, 515 East Bay Street. Kim, you'll provide us with an introduction to this project.
Thanks, Lindsay. Gonna bring Jonathan in.
Hello?
Hi, hold on just 1 minute. Let me introduce the project. 515 East Bay Street is requesting final approval for after the fact stucco application onto an existing brick building. The building isn't rated and was constructed in 1958 in the old city district. Here's an aerial for a little context and before and after, before and current. And another image of that. This is looking north on East Bay and looking south. And with all that said, I'll turn it over to Mr. Colarusso for the presentation. You have the floor.
Okay, thank you. I'm Jonathan Colarusso with Bennington Construction, here to talk about 515 East Bay Street. I'm a commercial general contractor. I became involved in this project towards the end of April. The owners I had actually reached out to a bunch of people. I've been starting a business over COVID and was reaching out to people and kind of got involved with this group and went to talk to them about their project. The stucco that we see on the building today was the condition that I first walked into it in. I initially approached the city about replacing the windows that are missing and installing a front door, and kind of ran into the improperly stuccoed condition that the BAR had been sitting on for a couple of months with a previous contractor. So where I am today is I'm looking for the BAR board guidance to find a way to move this project kind of out of abandonment and a way to move towards a building permit for a potential retail tenant coming into the existing retail space and for potential other developments on the building that are TBD. So the story that the owners have told me was that they prefer this building to be stuccoed. They had retained a contractor who had worked with them for many years. They asked and expected that contractor to do the right procedure with the BAR and the City of Charleston Building Department, and he told them that he did. So he went ahead and stuccoed the building, and that was that until until someone figured out that it had been done improperly. So that's where it sits today. And the stucco that's on the building is a synthetic stucco. It's applied directly onto the bricks, which were of the building's age, wire cut, machine-made bricks. Portland-based cement brown and scratch coats applied directly to the bricks with the acrylic top coat on top. I appreciate that the acrylic top coat is a material that's not well received in Charleston. Certainly not something I would have used, but that's what's there. So our proposal would be to find a way either through a mechanical or a bonding agent of some sort to remove this acrylic top coat and replace it with a Portland cement based mission finished stucco, which would be a smooth faced actual stucco in a very similar configuration to what we're seeing here on the bottom of the screen right now. We'd also like to basically button up this building. There's a lot of water intrusion coming through those open windows. And in general, what I would just really like to get out of this meeting is a way forward, whatever that may be in the board's best judgment. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Colarusso. Do we have any board questions for the applicant at this time?
This is,
You go, Bill.
I'm sorry, Joey, you want to go ahead?
No, you go ahead.
Oh, okay. This is Bill. Jonathan, do you know if the stucco finish, is it applied over a lath system? You said it's directly applied to the brick. So
Yes.
There's no lath system to your knowledge underneath it?
To my knowledge, no. The only backing material I saw was some plastic corner beads, and that's about it. Every place I chipped away was stucco right on the brick.
Right. Okay.
So my concern, and yeah, exactly. So the concern is if it can be removed, what do the bricks look like after that?
That was going to be my question. And so you did attempt to remove some areas. How easy or not was it?
I think that I think it will come off, but I think when it does come off, it's going to take the brick faces with it to a large degree.
Okay,
and
thank
so,
you.
Yeah.
Julia, did you have a question?
Yeah, a similar question. Do you have any photographs? I guess not, of where you took the stucco off. And then I was going to ask if you could explain what we're seeing at the unfinished jams, because there it sort of looks like there's like a backer board attached to the brick and the stucco's on top of that, but I just don't really know what I'm looking at. Can you find that picture? There.
Yeah, so it does look like a backer board. So that's the corner bead that I was talking about. They have all of these openings outlined in a plastic corner bead.
Mm.
So it's, and then if you were to, take a crowbar or a hammer and pry that away in that little gap, it would just be stucco applied to the brick face.
Gotcha.
And then they did wrap this white painted wooden jam was also added, probably by the same contractor, I would imagine.
Lovely. And you don't have any pictures of what the brick looked like after you took the stucco off? We can't see that, right?
I do have one. It's not actually in this application. I took one. If you'd like me to email it to you, I could do that right now.
You can send it to staff. Sure.
You can go ahead and email it to me.
Okay. Stand by.
Sorry, Glenn, did you have other questions?
Well, I wanted to confirm, and I actually, the photo that's up now, I guess I can see the detail of the face of what the brick looked like. I just wanted to confirm the age of that brick and just to inquire when we believe this work was done. I've not to get frustrated, but this is a repeat offender with other things that have happened on this property or the adjoining property that the board or staff have continued to have to deal with. And at some point, either the rules do or don't apply to everybody.
I appreciate your position on that, for sure. I'm trying to be here to be a good steward of this property and to work with the property owners as best as possible to make sure that everyone stays happy.
Yeah, and John, to that point, I will clarify that you were not the individual we have dealt with in the past on this. So that's not anything toward you. It's more of an ownership scenario, I think.
Yeah. And
Thank you for the clarification.
And this is Bill. I'll chime in, Glenn, on one of your questions. And yeah, granted, John has walked into a hornet's nest with this. That is definitely period brick, 50s. And I guess one thing about that texture of that brick, it probably helped so much with that bonding.
Yeah, it did.
Or it's like almost made for it. It's, oh, yeah. Okay.
I just sent those pictures to you too, Kim. You should see them.
Thank you.
I think 1952, does that sound right, John? Is the vintage?
We were thinking 1958 or so.
I've seen that brick even as late as some early 60s. So that sounds about right. I would think. This is Bill again. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I tried to do some historic research on the property. Yep, those are the bricks. So that was taken off with a diamond edge grinding wheel and, hammer, and, it will come off, but that's what it's going to look like when it comes off.
Which, I mean,
now,
John,
the gouge there is my sloppy hand on the grinder, but other than that, you can see what's left there as far as stucco.
I mean, there are some techniques for removing stucco from even that horrible kind of stucco. There are techniques, I think, and specific machines, the shooting of little sponges or little walnut shells. I don't know. I think it'd be worth a good faith effort to see how.
It's certainly in play. I don't disagree with what you're saying. I've entertained similar soda blasting or some such. I don't know if those little grooves in the bricks survive that, but
right.
I also don't know the bricks themselves are specifically historic or worthwhile in any, usual.
What is that diagonal? What is that diagonal groove? Is that something that
is from the grinder? That is me.
Yeah.
That's just a bad cut for me.
This is Bill again. So you had stated in your presentation about removing the acrylic top coating. Is that not quite as intensive of a process, I'm assuming? Or
no, I mean, I'm if not for the brick faces, I would say that the stucco could probably be removed. But I think the brick faces would suffer irreparable damage to the point of, if I have to replace a brick facade with new bricks, then, what are we saving here? So I believe the acrylic top coat could be removed relatively easily through sandblasting or even a bonding agent. Now, that's an assembly I would need to get vetted out, but I think if you can get that stucco back down to the brown coat, you should be able to apply a new stucco on top.
I guess my last question, this is Bill again. Is that brick a veneer brick, or is that a multi-wide masonry wall?
It's a veneer brick, full width veneer brick on a hollow CMU building.
Okay. Is there an air gap? Is there any weeping system involved in that, or is it just masonry to masonry?
That I do not know. I have not got behind that brick wall.
Okay.
I'm not positive. Sorry.
No problem.
Any other board questions at this time? All right, we'll move into public comment.
Yep, we have Anna Catherine Carroll.
Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society was disappointed to see this after the fact request, as stuccoing historically unfinished brick is not recommended per the Secretary of the Interior standards and represents a stark visual change in the character of the building. While the circumstance surrounding this case seems unfortunate, the alteration is inappropriate, and we urge the board to deny the request and require reversal of the material change. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna Catherine.
And we also have April Wood from Historic Charleston Foundation.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the request for after the fact approval for a stucco application onto an existing brick building. Because the building is over 50 years old, it is technically historic. It is also in the old and historic district. The owner should have followed the proper approval process so that we would not be in this difficult situation. To protect the character of the city, is it important to support and uphold the BAR approval process. Although we don't have a good suggestion to successfully remove the stucco, HCF is opposed to this application for after the fact approval, and we recommend denial. Thank you.
Thank you, April. Kim, is that it for public comment?
Yes, it is, Lindsay.
Thank you. We'll give city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Thanks. While it's really too bad that this has happened, I'm not sure how feasible it would be to remove the stucco without damaging the brick. So after seeing the photos, I'm a little disheartened that that can be done. But my comment was, as per Secretary Interior standards, we generally discourage the application of stucco to historic brick. In this instance, would be no different. Remove the stucco if possible, to do so without damaging the brick. And like I said, I'm not sure that that can be done. But we recommend denial of after the fact. So perhaps looking into how feasible it actually is would be the next step. Thanks.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. Colarusso, did you want to respond to anything raised during the public comment or staff comments?
Yeah, I do. I just don't know how to proceed with this project, I guess, at this point. I appreciate and understand everyone's comments that it shouldn't have been done this way and everyone should have followed the procedures, but they didn't. And we're sitting here with the building that is in violation of BAR ordinance, which, I understand and we all appreciate. And it looks like it's going to continue to sit indefinitely. I don't know how to do anything on this building without guidance from this board. Whether you want to say take the stucco off as a ruling, I can understand that at least and move forward. If you want to say, this is a terrible thing that happened, but we can't fix it and let it go forward like that, I can appreciate that. But kind of saying, we want you to remove it, but we know you can't. I don't know where that leaves the building, me or the owner.
We haven't made a ruling yet.
Oh, okay, great. Well, I guess that was my comment. My overwhelming comment is please help me find a way to move this building forward, whatever that is. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Colarusso. Okay, we're going to move into board discussion and a vote at this point. Any other applicant discussion is closed unless we specifically recognize you. All right.
Cool. Yeah, I agree that it's really unfortunate that this happened. And I'm pretty sure we all want to help find resolution and a way to move forward. So that's what we're doing. Now, there's nothing in the meantime stopping the applicant from temporarily protecting those points of water intrusion. That seems like a no-brainer. But I do believe it's worth a really good faith effort, as if their life depended on it, to use all the building technology available and try to get that stucco off successfully and really prove to staff or the board that they have exhausted all reasonable methods to get that done, because that would be the right thing to do. You know, the brick on this project was simple and it was typical of that era, and it spoke to the vintage and the typology of the building, especially that signage fin was really charming. So yeah, I think it's worth a deferral for further attempts in good faith to remove the stucco successfully. And I'll see what other board members think about whether it should come back to the board or whether staff can handle it from there. But that's my position.
This is Lindsay, and I agree with Julia. I don't even want a good faith effort, but I want a best effort to remove that stucco. And then once we see that best effort has been made and that the techniques available have been used, I think that would help the board get over the hurdles here and find a different path forward. But I agree with Julia's comments.
Yeah, this is Bill, and I guess I was going to ask if that brick was also present on the back of the building, say away from the street. If indeed it is,
just on the East Bay side.
It's only on the East Bay side. Is there an inconspicuous location anywhere of that brick, or that, excuse me, of where that stucco is over the brick?
The most inconspicuous location that I had found was where I took the little sample that you have. It's on the wing wall as it turns into the Garden State tile parking lot. I chose that as the most inconspicuous spot. So just because it's off the street. There's a similar wing wall on the other side, but kind of more visible.
Okay, because that's, I believe, Julia, you made a really good suggestion that we really need to have this exhausted as far as potential removal methods and systems. And so if there is, I would suggest the only other maybe caveat to that would be as, you know, as inconspicuous as a location as possible, in case it, you know, there's, you know, something that affects the aesthetic of the building that might be irreversible in the exploratory process. But I do believe that all of those methods do need to be exhausted, you know, prior to a conclusion. And I do think once those methods are tried, that there should be a staff field inspection of the results of that. And I would trust staff to make any conclusion of what would be appropriate action going forward from that point.
Fillmore here. I pretty much agree with everything that's been said. I personally think that that the application should be denied, but I would be all right with a board condition that the remediation techniques be determined by staff. And I think Julia's idea that effort be made to remove the stucco. My instinct is that base coat is probably type S, because that's become pretty standard. It's a terrible thing to put stucco directly on brick with type S, but that's probably what it is. And the face of those brick is going to really try to stick to them. But there are some, you know, newer methods that might help remove that stucco. I think the end result is probably going to be that brick is going to get covered up with something before it's all over. But I am fine with letting the remediation method be determined by staff, if everybody else is.
I agree, Fillmore. I do think that, I mean, my opinion would be that this deserves a denial with required removal of the stucco, and those removal methods should be illustrated with samples. And then if something happens from there, that's another discussion. but I don't think it's doing the brick justice to be thinking down the road. I mean, it's going to be tough, but you know, I mean, this is no different from telling first applicant that he can't replace his standing seam roof with shingle.
That was a motion. I'll second that.
I don't know what I said, but I'm okay with it being a motion.
I got denial of after the fact demolition of stucco.
Yeah, but, and so I'll just, so I can word that into a motion. I just want to be clear that the path forward is that the applicant should make additional removal attempts to be reviewed by staff, or if staff wants the board, you know, however that is comfortable. I don't want to leave him in a vortex, but I mean, the answer is remove the stucco.
And there are special subcontractors that do have really good track records of success with some of these difficult situations. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion for denial of the application with removal of the unapproved stucco application to expose the original brick with samples or test areas to be performed for review by BAR staff.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for denial of the after the fact application of stucco with removal of the unapproved stucco with test areas to be presented and reviewed by staff.
I'll second that.
All right, I'll put it to a vote. Bill,
Yay in favor.
Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Glenn,
Yay in favor.
Julia.
Yay in favor.
The chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Mr. Colarusso, I hope we gave you some guidance on this application.
You did. I really appreciate it. It's definitely a way to start moving forward, and that's what I really wanted to get out of this meeting. So I do appreciate it. I had one question. How big of an area do you think these sample removal pieces should be? Like 2x2, 3x3?
Jonathan, why don't we set up a meeting and we can talk about it? I'm happy to discuss it with you tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Colarusso. All right, we are on agenda item number 7, 1 Percy Street. Tim, could you please give us an overview?
Thank you. 1 Percy Street is requesting conceptual approval for a previously existing internal piazza stair and rear addition. The building's a category 4 in the Canterbury-Elliotboro neighborhood. It was built in 1898 in the Old City District. And here's an aerial for your familiarization. It's almost to the Spring Street intersection. Here it is on the east side. And just a couple site images. Looking at the right side. Looking north on Percy Street. Looking south. Some Sanborn maps from 1902 and 1955, shows the building unchanged. And with that said, I'll turn it over to the applicant. Oh, not so fast, Kim. There's a previous motion from August 12th, which was denial for the stair and restudy of addition for general architectural direction, staff comments and board comment to ensure graphic quality represents the true intent of construction. And with that said, I'll turn it over to the applicant. We have Mr. Cameron Glaus and Ms. Heather Green.
Thank you, Kim. This is Cameron. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
All right. Thank you. And you are correct. We're revisiting a previous application where we actually proposed an external to the Piazza spiral stair on number 1 Percy Street. So we've looked at it back again, and there's, as you mentioned, there's 2 portions to this proposal. There's the now integral staircase that we're proposing that goes from 1 Piazza to the second story Piazza. And there's the laundry room addition on the rear of the building, which is on the left side. You can see the plat, if you go to the next slide, and even one following, that'll show you the footprint was in the previous plat of the laundry room addition on the rear. On the west side right there. And as you go down, that's sort of a axonometric view on the next slide of the staircase. So essentially addressing the staircase first, we're attempting to restore a previous condition of this staircase that existed. We know it existed for a long time. This is 1898 to our best guess of the construction of the house. We do not know for certain if this integral Piazza stair is original. We know it's very old. That's what we do know. It could be 100 to 110 years old. It could be original, but I don't have enough evidence to show you that for certain. I do not know. So we're suggesting to propose to put that stair back. It's fairly common, whether they were added, at what point in time. It's fairly common in the Canberra-Elliotboro neighborhood. There's probably, of Charleston singles, there's probably, on my last survey, I think 50 if you combine Spring and Cannon Street alone, and then if you look for more of the capillary streets, Rose, Percy, and so forth, you probably get another 50 more where they have this integral version. And just as a correction, as I've watched this meeting, the old Bob Stockton rules is that this is pronounced Piazza, not Piazza. So sorry if I'm just getting a little academic on everyone here, but so we're attempting to put the stair back on the Piazza, as Bob would say. I think this was taken down in about 1990. There are some really funny unpermitted stuff that happened to this house in the 90s. Which one of them, I believe, was the demolition of this staircase. So we are going to reintroduce that staircase. Well, we're proposing to reintroduce that staircase, as well as, Kim, if you wouldn't mind going down to, I suppose the elevation from the south would best show the laundry room addition right there. And you are correct, Kim. The last time we brought this for review, it was to sharpen the details. The soffits weren't quite very sharp on our drawings last time that we showed this rear addition as well. So we tried to clean it up on the drawing this time a little better. We want to do a board and batten thing that is obviously, differentiates itself and is subordinate to the rest of the house. We're going to use square balusters to differentiate from the original balusters. And of note is that we're actually going to restore on the first, this is actually a good view, on the first floor Piazza, all the way to the left, there's a missing section of the balustrade that we're going to restore because that was formerly the entrance from a handicap ramp that sort of took up the whole driveway on that. So our proposed condition puts that back. So Kim, you and I discussed a little earlier today that I would cede a little bit of my time to the homeowner herself, actually, Heather Green. I think that was a brief and concise description of the two elements that we're proposing right now. If it's possible, maybe on the Zoom thing, Heather could raise a hand and chime in during this period. If not, that's fine. But I think, as you suggested, it might be better if Heather chimes in as part of the applicant rather than like a public comment, I think. So if we can, I'd like to cede a little of my presentation time to the homeowner.
You certainly can. This is the appropriate time for Ms. Green to speak, and I see that she is on. Ms. Green, if you want to go ahead, you've got about 4 minutes.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Heather Green. I'm the homeowner at 1 Percy Street. I would like to start by thanking you all for your time tonight and hearing this request. I wanted to quickly introduce my family and tell you a bit about why we are making this request. My husband and myself both work downtown. I'm the director of operation for 3 restaurants, as well as investing in 2, and my husband works at the VA. We've lived in this neighborhood for 6 years. We've raised a family in Charleston for 16 years, so we love Charleston, obviously. When we first moved here in this neighborhood, I was the treasurer of the neighborhood association, and my husband is now the vice president, so we're extremely active in the community. We have a daughter in high school, and my 21-year-old nephew currently lives with us. Due to changes in our family situation, we decided to purchase a larger house next door to our current house, which is 1 Percy Street. We wanted to stay in the neighborhood again because this is home to us. We're asking to reinstall the Piazza stairs and add a laundry room, as Cameron said. We've reached out to our surrounding neighbors with these plans and received their support and input. We are very mindful of the desire to maintain the architectural character of our neighborhood. We've successfully renovated our house at 3 Percy using these principles. As Cameron said, we would like to restore the missing section of the first floor piazza railing that was removed by the previous homeowner. When we researched the history of the house, we discovered census records dating back to the 1900s, documenting multiple dwelling units in this house over the years and this census from the 1900s and forward. When we bought this house, the second floor was being rented separately and had a full kitchen. During renovations, we found evidence of the original piazza stairs and pictures of those stairs, the poor house back then. There's still an exterior doorbell on the second floor piazza, which we plan on keeping. It's kind of fun. Historically, this has always been a working family neighborhood, with most of the houses accommodating extended families and several separate families. We work hard and care about this neighborhood. We are asking for the opportunity to restore features of the house that were previously present and add a small addition to the rear of the property. These changes would go a long way to improve the livability and day-to-day functionality of our house. It will allow us to live. It will allow us to support our extended family while at the same time allowing my husband and myself the opportunity to enjoy our home with a small level of independence and privacy. I wanted to thank you so much for your time and consideration of our application. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Green. All right, do we have any board questions for the applicant?
This is Bill. Real quick, Ms. Green, did Ms. Green just say that she had some photographs of the either evidence of the Piazza stair or of the Piazza stair? That's what I just heard. Is that?
Yeah, this is Cameron Glaws. If we go to the last slide, I think there it is. That was before the 90s renovation.
Okay.
Where they did away with it. The framing around the opening on the second floor piazza, as mentioned before, it looks really old, but people have tinkered with it here and there, over the decades. So again, I do not have any definitive evidence that it's original, but I know it's very old. I can definitely tell that it's probably original, but I can't tell you that it is. So that's my best estimation.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of questions. I think the proposed plans still indicate a spiral stair, but that's not what you're asking for. Is that correct?
If there's a spiral stair, that might be leftover vestigial, if you will, from the application that we brought to Yeah, I'm not sure why that slide made its way on to this current proposal. That's what we talked about at the last meeting that got denied. The logic was, not monkey with the historic house and make that vertical, walk accessibility from the exterior, but upon discovery of the previous integral is the word I keep using. I don't know if that's proper, but the integral staircase, that seemed to be the more logical intervention if you're going to be going between the two piazzas. So that's the new proposal.
Thank you. 2 other quick questions. Is there any thought of repairing or doing anything to that sunroom area? The photographs make it look like it's really rough, and some other places that need repair and stuff. Is that part of your request as well, or no?
The sunroom area, I presume you're referring to the step down towards the west. If we look at that right there, yes, the proposal is there's some loose. That's one of those kind of funny unpermitted things that happen along the way. We're not requesting to remove, change, or undo that in this proposal, but we're going to fix anything that's goofy and not wasn't really properly done in the first place as best we can. Those large windows, in hindsight, whether they were approved or not when they were done a few decades ago, I probably would all agree that they're not really in character of the building. So the best we could do at the moment is make sure they're safe and habitable, that you can't lean against one and fall out the window, essentially. So
thank you. If that's part of it, I think anything that's part of the scope of work should be really clearly defined on the drawings for staff review. And then here's my big question: is this a single family house, right? It's not a duplex, right?
Well, actually, we've originally we had not applied or brought to the zoning staff's concern of creating a duplex, but given the square footage, the lot coverage, and all the thresholds per zoning, the parking as well, I think it's actually reasonable to say that we are converting it to a duplex with an independent access right now. So,
but has that been officially established through the zoning department? Because that would have to happen before we review it as a duplex, right?
We have talked to zoning staff many times.
Like approval, has it been through the review and approved as a 2-unit property?
I'm not sure if they've actually granted multifamily. What my instruction was from zoning was to come to this BAR meeting and say that that our intention is to construct it to a multifamily. So that's my instruction from zoning staff.
It looks like it's zoned single family.
Okay. All right. So that was a big question I have, because I just am not really understanding the need for a stair outside the house when it's a single family house, and when I guess could be in the rear. But anyway, we'll talk about that when we get to board discussion. Thank you.
Yeah, I have 1 or 2 questions. What is the width? I understand, I see the photo, and I understand that at some point in the past, there was apparently an extra stair probably added when a lot of this neighborhood had some rentals divvied up in them. That happened to a lot of houses in this neighborhood. A lot of that has been reversed. A lot of it hasn't. But what is the width? But from column to wall, what is the width of that piazza? So that I'm just curious, can you get a code compliant stair after you come in that front door? Has the math been done? I'm just.
Good question.
It looks tight.
Yeah, no, it's just under 8. So if we have 36 clear distance from handrail to handrail on the staircase, I believe we're good to go.
That doesn't look like 8 feet of piazza width.
I don't think it would.
Unless that front door is like 5 feet wide.
I don't have it called out on these drawings specifically. I believe it's, well, I'm kind of looking at them right now. Good question. And thank you for asking. I believe it's between 7 and 8. I don't have it called out on the drawings.
So I guess this might be more of a comment, but a follow up to that, I think we need to understand, could a stair be code compliant even go there? And then I'm not to be rude, but these drawings need a lot of refinement. Nearly everything about the elevations that's drawn is not accurate based on the photos. And so I think to consider changes to this house, we need to have accurate, measured drawings of all faces of the building.
Do you have any other board questions at this time? All right, Kim, we'll move into public comment, and looks like we have several.
We have April Wood speaking.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has spoken with the applicant and has reviewed the request for conceptual approval of the reconstruction of the previously existing internal piazza stair and rear addition. While we do not generally advocate for stairs within piazzas, the applicant has demonstrated that this property previously had an internal piazza stair. We do not believe this is an unreasonable request, and we recommend approval. This said, some of the board comments that were just, or questions that were just brought up, I think it would be important to have the zoning requirements clarified. Thank you.
Thank you, April.
That's it for public spoken comment.
Okay, well, we have a letter here for from William K. Turner at 247 Rutledge Avenue. Dear BARS board members, I'm writing to support the overall concept for the alterations in addition to 1 Percy Street. Although I live several blocks away, I'm very familiar with the property, having owned and subsequently sold the 2 adjacent properties to its rear. Concerning the removal of the ramp adjacent to the piazza, and reintroduction of the staircase within the piazza, and reestablishment of the balustrade, I lend my full support. Although I typically do not favor stairs internal to a piazza, they indeed did exist in that location when the prior owner removed them back in the mid-1990s. Also, I believe in this instance their reintroduction is a good trade-off for the removal of the large, awkwardly detailed and scaled second floor deck and stairs on the rear of the house, added as part of the 1990s renovation. With the proper detailing, I believe they can harmoniously exist within the piazza. Concerning the rear addition, with some refinements to the design, I also believe the concept of the design to be appropriate. In my opinion, a simple, well-detailed addition which distinguishes itself from the historic structure is the proper direction. By locating the addition to the center of the rear elevation, its visibility from Percy Street shouldn't be noticeable. Also, it will be minimally visible from Spring Street and Ash Street due to adjacent houses. Sincerely, Bill Turner. Okay, we also have a couple of other comments, and Kim, I'm going to assume that these individuals are not here, so I'll read out their comments. Okay, we have a comment from Alexandre Green. I apologize if I butchered that name. At 10 Percy Street. I fully support Heather and Will's request for conceptual approval for previously existing internal piazza stair and rear addition. Heather and Will have done a tremendous job over the past couple of years in the neighborhood, and their renovation plans for 1 Percy Street are great and perfectly in line with the style and vibe of the neighborhood. Another comment from David Underwood at 12 Percy Street. As a resident and owner of 12 Percy Street, I have reviewed the plan submitted to the BAR by Christian Hughes with Old City Builders on behalf of Will and Heather Green. I fully endorse all demolition, modifications, and alterations proposed for 1 Percy Street. And then we have a comment from Tara Romano at 6 Ash Street. Hello, the owners of 1 Percy Street reached out to us regarding their application for the BIRS meeting on September 9th, 2021. I live diagonally behind 1 Percy Street and have a direct view of the rear of the home from my office window. We are in support of their application and have no issues with adding a small addition on the rear and restoring a previous stair on the porch, which is typical of many of the houses in this area. Thank you. And I believe that is it for public comment. Kim, if you will give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Thank you, Lindsay. According to the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation, removing historic fabric is discouraged. Charleston's iconic element is the Piazza and therefore deserves to retain its integrity with an unbroken balustrade. The preservation staff feel that this Piazza stair is not appropriate. While there are many sets of stairs and piazzas in this neighborhood, most were constructed prior to BAR purview. The second unit has not been approved for zoning staff, and so at this moment, the stairs are not a code requirement. If they were to become required, we would suggest that they be located in the rear where they were most recently located. Regarding the rear addition, which was deferred on August 12th for restudy of general architectural direction, no changes have been made to follow the board's directive, so we recommend deferral on that item. So our recommendation is for denial of the stair, restudy of addition for general architectural direction, and approval of after the fact demolition of ramp and stair, which was on their actual application.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. Claus and Ms. Green, did you have any response or clarification to anything raised during public comment or in the staff comments and recommendations?
Sure, Cameron Glaus here. And I'm sure Heather has a response too. I want to respond to the fact that it seems that the staff's comment, I'm going to start on the rear addition, was that no changes have been made. So I'm not sure what that's based on, because our presentation now includes sort of refined elements that were changed. So unfortunately, I don't have the side-by-side from the previous to the current application of details and the extent of the refinement. So I have nothing to show what the difference is between that and this one. So, but it's inaccurate to say that no changes have been made to the presentation of the detail refinement. We added a fascia board. We added, previously column capitals and bases that weren't on the previous drawings. We intended to sharpen it up a little bit more. The intention of that rear addition is to be pretty muted. And honestly, I don't think it matters to myself or the homeowners whether it's vertical siding, as can be shown in board and batten, or whether it's horizontal. Our intention was to simply show some distinction from that and the rest of the building. So there were some changes made to hopefully, maybe it's not translating visually very well on the presentation. That's my only comment to that previously. I'd like to probably furthermore, my other only response is, as far as this integral stair, I think the comment that that from the board asking about code compliance is extremely significant. And as far as, clear width on the stairway, we wouldn't be able to get past, the permit office if we didn't have code compliance. So we're code compliance is surely, a must, a requisite in building this stairway. So if that wasn't properly detailed, I'm glad to sharpen those up and email that to staff about the clear width of the stairway. And not only that, but then the passageway beyond the stairway on the existing piazza. I guess I close with the fact that unless I hearken Bob Stockton too many times in a single proposition here, that there's several versions and archetypes of the Charleston single, and I'm not going to rattle off, but there's about 4 or 5, and one of them is this condition where the integral stair exists on the piazza. Whether it was built when the house was constructed or whether it was built a year later or 100 years later, we believe that it's far closer to the original construction than it is, modern day when this staircase was built. I think regardless of that, you have to look at Charleston architecture as a living history. You really do. I mean, these are usable houses. These are not museum artifacts. We're proposing a condition that benefits this very contributive homeowner in Charleston, a owner occupier. This is not what you see a lot in Cannonboro, Elliottboro as a mini hotel. That's not what's going on here. So you have to sort of look at the living history of how these buildings progressed. And I think that lends to its appropriateness personally. That's my opinion, is that this is a version of the piazza that is, it's not only common, it numbers in the hundreds from south of Broad to Peach Street, and this is not a kind of a one-off. So there's a recognizable architectural form, and we're not actually inventing this wheel, but rather attempting to restore a previous condition. So I'll kind of close with that, and my co-applicant and homeowner Heather may or may not want to comment, so I'll cede any more time if she does.
You're actually out of time on the response. Ms. Green, I'll give you 30 seconds if you had something you wanted to say.
Sure, thank you so much. All I would say is that we're working really hard. We're hardworking people. We actually live in this neighborhood. We work in this neighborhood. We're the kind of people that I think Charleston wants to live in these neighborhoods. This process is preventing us from doing that. We don't have the money to hire a high-powered architect to come in here and make these fancy drawings. We're doing everything we can to restore a house and be able to work and live here. I think workforce housing is really important to Charleston, and this is that for us. We have a family and we're trying to live here. I'm trying not to be emotional about this plea, and I appreciate I only have 30 seconds, but we're not a developer that's coming in here doing the least possible to rent this out to college kids who don't care. We're the people that live here and care. So I do hope that has some meaning to people. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Green. All right, let's move into board discussion.
All right, I can start. And I guess the crux of the issue for me is that this is a single family house, and I definitely want residents to live here and be real working people. Absolutely appreciate that. But it's a single family house, and so I see no compelling reason to reintroduce a stair that was clearly introduced after this original house was built, and it was introduced for it to be a duplex, which it's not now. And by reintroducing it, you effectively, really impede the use of either level of the piazza. So that to me is the biggest issue. If at some point in the future it is permitted to be a duplex, even then, I think that a stair should happen at the rear and not kind of violate the sanctity of the double piazza, which is so important in Charleston. Yeah, and I do, for better or worse, I mean, this house is within the purview of the BAR. It's a really nice house that's worthy of careful review and attention. And so for us to do that, staff and board members, it's really important to have drawings that are clear and that call out all the changes and repairs that are going to be made and really acknowledge all the actual details that are there, because yeah, these drawings are really loose. That makes it difficult for all of us. I think that is all I've got.
I agree with everything Julia said, and I will just point out that my comments about the drawings, I mean, they have to be accurate, and it doesn't take a high-powered architect or a lot of money to take a tape measure and draw something accurately. So I am actually, my comments are really more attempting to make sure that this, if a stair were approvable to the board, I think before it comes to us with how we're seeing it now, we don't have a measured drawing that seems to be accurate to even know if the stair can fit on the piazza. So it shouldn't go to BAR for review, then zoning for review, and then oops, we have a hiccup at the building permit department. If it's going to be presented as an option to the board, it needs to be buildable. And I'm just looking at photos of the doorway and the width of this piazza, and I don't think it's an 8-foot piazza. And so I think we simply need accurate information with, accurate windows and accurate doors and accurate widths and depths and heights. And that's all I can really point out. I'm saying that more attempting to help the owner so that they don't spend time and months going down a road that can't move forward.
Glenn, are you saying, would you entertain a stair being reintroduced on this piazza?
Probably
in any
not.
case for a single family residence? Okay.
No, because there's no way that's an original feature of the house. I mean, that was added for a rental. And I think it probably would not meet current code, and because it's gone, a new stair would have to meet current code. And I don't think it can do it, truthfully. I'm just being honest about that.
I agree.
This is Bill. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I cut somebody off?
Nope.
Okay. This is Bill. I would say that, yeah, Julia, I think you made a pretty salient point there at the beginning, especially the fact, hearing and seeing staff's comments as well regarding the procedural sequence that's going on here. It looks like, I believe the applicants under an understanding that someone at zoning staff said, go ahead and float something to the BAR, but procedurally, we all know that's not the usual sequence of things. And I'm trying to understand why even the stair would be needed in a single family, scenario. And I believe Kim mentioned in her comments that zoning evidently had not been consulted. So I'm having a little bit of a problem with the idea of establishing something that, maybe just isn't even needed. And so I'm trying to get my head around how that has come to play and how it, potentially could be sorted out. But Julia, your original point is right on. I mean, if it's single family residence and it originally did not have this stair, which I definitely concur with that conclusion, why are we, and it's going to remain a single family residence, why are we even, looking at it? So that is the point. And then I know I made the comment last time about the graphic clarity of the drawings, and I'll just give you an example. So if you go to that side elevation, Kim, that you've had up there a couple of times now, Yeah. So, just an example, I'm seeing these roof lines I've proposed here on the back on the addition, and I'm seeing these columns, but, there's a rafter shown there. Well, what's it bearing on? There's no beam, there's no entablature there. There's just the thickness of a rafter, and it's shown sticking over a column. How structurally does that actually work? It's that kind of graphic issue. It's not just slapping a capital on the column and calling it more detailed. It's the actual construction detailing that was the impetus of my first comment last time. Was I want to see how it's actually going to be built and graphically represented in that way. And again, that's something that's really kind of a basic requirement. So anyway, I guess that's where I stand. If there's any clarification that could be given about this zoning sequencing and all that, I would appreciate it. But right now, I'm not understanding the sequencing that's going on.
No more here. I don't have anything to add. I think my fellow board members have covered all the issues adequately.
All right. Staff's recommendation was okay. All right. Yeah. Again, I think even if it is approved at some point to be a duplex, I don't think putting a stair on that piazza is appropriate. I'll just say that. But so at the moment, since it's a single family house, I'm going to go with staff's recommendation for denial of stair and accessory study addition. And then maybe, sorry, I'm disjointed here, but I don't think anybody's expressing any major concern about the concept of an addition as shown. I think it's more just a question of the clarity of the graphics. Is that fair to say? All right, so I'm going to make a motion, try this for denial of the stair and deferral of the addition for graphic clarification.
Okay.
And then I think maybe it could be final review by staff of the addition. I'd be okay with that if anybody else is.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for denial of the stair and deferral of the addition for graphic clarification with final review by staff. This is just with respect to the addition. Do we have a second?
Fillmore, I'll second.
All right, I'll put it to a vote. Glenn?
Yay in favor.
So, Bill, excuse me.
Yay in favor.
Julia?
Yay in favor.
Yay in favor.
And the chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Claus and Mrs. Green.
Thank you. See you.
Okay, we are on agenda item number 8, 91 Spring Street. Kim, if you'll give us an introduction, please.
Thank you, Lindsay. All right, moving on. 91 Spring Street is requesting conceptual approval for the renovation to including dormers and window relocation. This is a category 3 building in the Canberra neighborhood, was built in 1885 in the old city district. Here's just an aerial on the south side of Spring Street, across from Ash Street. And some existing site photos, the main house on the property. And that rear shed back there, you can see big long gray building is at the very end of the property. Emanates. This is looking west on Spring, looking east. There's some Sanborn maps from 1888 and 1944. Some historic photos. And with that all said, I'll turn it over to the applicant to present the presentation. We have Mr. Eddie Bello.
Okay, can y'all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Eddie Bello with Bello Garris Architects, and I am not a high-powered architect, but I want to be when I grow up. Our office is just down the street from this project, and it's actually right next door to One Percy, so it's kind of interesting hearing some of these things. We have the next 3 items on the agenda. There are 2 buildings next to each other, 91 and 93 Spring. They will end up sharing the same lot and the same parking, and we have 2 buildings behind that you'll see in a few minutes. So there may be a little bit of overlap in this presentation, or in really the next presentation, but just to focus on this one, as Kim said, the alterations to 91 Spring are relatively minor. So if you could go to the next slide, please, Kim. It's a beautiful house. This was Herbert DaCosta's residence, I believe. I don't think that the survey card is accurate because it dates the house, I think, earlier, 1885, but the Sanborn shows a different building there in 1888. So I think it was built late 1880s, 1890s, just based on its Victorian Queen Anne appearance. Anyway, it's a beautiful house. So just to keep moving, Kim, next slide. We can go through these fairly quickly. I think everyone knows where it is. Okay, so these are just more photos. All right, so this is a site plan. I'll probably refer to it a lot more in the next application, but we're proposing new buildings that we'll ask for in the next item number. But 91 Spring is the building on the left. Yeah, next slide. So on the ground floor, we are changing some stairs. There are some non-historic stairs. I guess I can't point, but just to the, well, no, up, Kim, the very end of the piazza, right. Those at the top, those are being removed. And then the stairs sort of in the corner where the piazza turns, right there. We're asking to move those, just reusing the balustrade. So if we go to the next floor, I'll show you this in elevation, but we're also requesting dormers. Next slide. Okay, you can see on the left there, that ground floor, just relocating the stairs at the end of the piazza. That just makes us, it allows us to use that ground floor piazza better because you can't really get to the main piazza in the current configuration. Next slide. Next slide. You can see the dormers. It's better to see it in elevation. Okay, so the left view is the Spring Street elevation, and the right is not visible from public right of way, but it just explains the way the house works. Next slide. Again, existing west elevation. Next slide. East, this is minimally visible. Next slide. Next slide. Let's just go to where it has the comparison ones. We have a lot of, all right, so here you can, I'm sorry, go back one, yeah. So here, and we do have the existing and proposed, but this shows the 3 dormers that we're asking for to the right there. I don't know that you can see these from the street, but if you can, you might be able to see the one on the far right, very minimally visible. The intent is for these to match the existing in detailing and proportions, but they're actually smaller. And I think our note is mislabeled. Those would be true divided wood windows and just pretty much what you'd expect. Next slide. Another change that we're asking for is that window that is pointed out here on the east is actually lower. We're putting a stair inside. And so we just want to raise that to the landing of the stair, basically relocate the exact window. Next slide. Yeah, here's the existing and proposed. So fairly minimal. We think it's in keeping with the house. Next slide. The house is in great shape. We don't have to do too much to it. We want to leave it as grand as it can be. All right, I think that's it. Next slide. Yeah, here's the showing just that window. You know, we could leave it there and just have the stair, you know, have a blind window, but if we are allowed to, we'd like to move it out. Next slide. Next slide. You don't really need this. This is just us working through some details. Next slide. Okay, that's it for 91 Spring.
All right, thanks, Eddie.
Thank you.
Do we have any board questions for the applicant?
At the new dormers, Eddie, what roofing material do you think you'll use to match the existing? I'm just wondering.
Well, it's a standing seam metal to match existing, Julia. I mean,
Okay, cool. Sold.
We've got to work through with the contractor, but it'll be hand crimped. It'll be the best we can do to match what's there.
Cool. And I've noticed one tiny thing, the detail of the jam on A302 shows a corner board indicated like on the sides of the dormers, which I imagine you're trying to detail these like the front ones, which don't have that, just a tiny little thing I noticed.
Yeah, you're right. I think the intent there is to have it be as narrow as possible, like a true historic dormer, but you're right, it probably isn't a board there.
This is Bill. So Eddie, that's already a used sort of garret space up there. Is that what we have? You're just sort of making it, more usable.
Yeah, you can go in part of it now. You can stand up in there. Part of it is used. The other half of it is used for just mechanical. It's all very inefficiently laid out. So we're going to put that somewhere else.
Okay. But it looks like that garret space, at least part of it, has been used for a long time, from what you can tell.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, right. You can walk up there. It's interesting.
Okay.
In the main house, that third floor is a whole bunch of rooms. It's pretty full.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other board questions at this time? All right, we'll move on to public comment.
We have Anna Catherine Carroll registered to speak.
Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society is generally supportive of the proposal. However, we do not feel it is appropriate or necessary to remove a section of the historic balustrade at the rear of the piazza to facilitate the relocation of a secondary stair. It is important to retain the wraparound form of the piazza, and we would prefer to see the rear stair remain in its current location. Additionally, the proposed rear dormers appear unnecessarily tall and should be reduced as to not extend to the height of the ridge. Thank you.
Do we have April speaking as well?
We don't. That's it.
All right. Well, Kim, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
The proposed alterations are acceptable and supported by the preservation staff, although I do agree with Anna Catherine Carroll in that the balustrade should remain unbroken. The staff's recommending conceptual approval with final review by staff.
Thank you, Kim. Eddie,
Missed
did
that
you
one.
want to respond or clarify to anything raised in public comment or staff comment?
Well, yeah, I guess I understand both comments. For the dormer, we're trying to use that space, and ideally they would be lower than the ridge, but honestly, to actually use the head height's not very high, so we're trying to that's needed to actually use the space. I will add again, I don't know that these are going to be very visible. On the balustrade, yeah, I mean, the purpose, and I think that's a valid comment, but I think the purpose is now we can access that piazza from where people are going to be parking. Otherwise, you can't get to the main piazza. So that there's a need for it. So that's my only response.
Thank you, Eddie. All right, we'll move into board discussion and a vote.
This is Bill. I have one very quick question, I guess, of Eddie. In light of those comments about the balustrade, so that rear stair that you're proposing to remove and reestablish a balustrade there, is that rear stair impinging on a potential parking space? Is that the reason you wanted that gone?
You know, honestly, I can't remember. The parking is fairly tight, but it's also, yes, it is, Bill. It does impact the parking, but also if you go to the, yeah, you've got it, the site plan, you see, which is nice, but you cannot, there's actually 3 stairs to that little rear porch now. We're taking 2 away, or we'd like to. So it's twofold. One is to eliminate the end stair, which is not historic at all. There's nothing valuable about it. But the other one onto the main piazza is just allowing access from where people would park so they can get up to that piazza. That's the main reason. Because you can't wrap around. There was an addition that was done quite some time ago. You can see that bathroom there in the corner. And that's what, you can't connect, the piazzas don't connect now. You can't really walk to them.
So there's probably in the grand concept here, at least an offset, but maybe even a net gain of balustrade length versus what's existing, because you're offsetting a big wide stair on the back, another pretty wide stair in the corner, and replacing those 2 losses with one just code width stair on the back of the piazza. So I guess then, Kim, in your amended comment per, I guess, Anna Catherine's comment, is it that it is the breaking at the end of the piazza, the visual there, that's troublesome for you? Is that a fair?
Yeah, but is that historic material that you're removing able to be reused?
That was the intent, because those are all turned balusters. And so whatever we can, we'll just relocate to another location on the piazza. That was always the goal.
It's really far away. I see your point, Bill.
I don't know that this is germane, but I'm going to kind of miss having long-term residents who are so culturally significant to the neighborhood and the city. But I mean, don't get me wrong, I would have totally done this project if somebody asked me to.
I agree too.
I'm fine with the window moving on the east side. I think I'm okay with the new stair at the back of the main piazza and reusing that fabric on the second, on the extension of the piazza. My only issue is kind of in agreement with something Anna Catherine said, that the dormers, if you look at the section, I think it's also A302, Kim, if you could flip to that. There you go. It's to mention, it says that the header height is at 9. So I think you could easily pull that down some and still have a nice dramatic kind of relief to the low headroom up there, and not be right at the ridge. Even if for egress reasons or whatever, the window needed to widen a little bit, that would be okay. But it just strikes me as kind of uncomfortable to have that ridge right up at the main ridge. Otherwise, that's all I got.
I guess this is Bill. I was going to go ahead. And I think the balustrade, Julia, I think you kind of made the same summary that I was concluding. It's sort of in the roundabout way, it's a net gain actually, and especially if we reuse the, the balustrade, that parts and pieces that we've got. So I was going to go ahead and try to put together a motion, if that's okay. I was going to make a motion for conceptual approval with final review by staff, with a board comment that the ridge point of the dormers is to be lowered subordinate of the ridge line of the rear section of the house.
Okay, we have
And final review by staff is what's recommended. So final review by staff.
Okay. The motion on the floor for conceptual approval with a board comment, the ridge point of the dormers be lowered such that they're subordinate to the main roof line. Do I have that right, Bill?
Yes.
And then final review by staff. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, I'll put the motion to a vote. Glenn,
In favor.
Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Bill,
Yay in favor.
Julia.
Yay in favor.
The chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. I won't say thank you yet, Eddie. You've got 2 more agenda items. So we're
Kim,
on.
you were keeping the lights on there? Is that what you were doing?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. All right.
Agenda item number 9, again, 91 Spring Street. Kim, if you'll give us an overview of this request.
Great. 91 Springs requesting conceptual approval for the new construction of 2 new 1 and 2 family units in the rear. And Eddie, back to you.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks everybody for those comments last time. I think we can easily get that dormer to work. All right, so this one, this is a little confusing again. So we're adding 2 new, or we're proposing to add 2 new buildings behind 91 and 93 Spring. Technically, right now, it's there. The lot for 91 is an L shape and extends beyond 93, but eventually it will be 1 lot. So that's why it's all in 1 application. We can skip through this. Let's go to the site plan, please, Kim. Oh, well, I'm sorry. Let's go back for a minute. This is the sort of spiel I give every time we have a project in Canterbury, Elliott Borough. You know, our office is here. I spend a lot of time walking around. This is such a wonderfully diverse neighborhood in terms of architectural styles. There are all kinds of quirky things that have occurred over time. And it used to be, I remember not that long ago, it used to be much more colorful and just kind of wacky. And so, not that we're proposing anything crazy, but you know, I want people to kind of remember where we're working. And I just have always loved the sort of energy of Spring Street in particular. Next slide. So these are just showing, again, just all the different types of buildings here. A lot of Victorian, which again is very decorative, but just interesting things going on. Next slide, please. There's a turret in that building. Yeah, little turrets on this other one. Different porches, a lot of Victorian things happening. So anyway, so next slide. Just remember that when I talk about our building. Okay, so a couple things. So again, this is a very deep lot, like a lot are along Spring. And we have 2 buildings, again, that we're asking for approval for. The first one, next slide. Okay, so this is existing real quick. So there, at staff, we got the carport approved for demolition, but it's wide open right now. And we have a landscape plan we'll show you in a minute. But these are just some views of the very deep lot. It's just kind of mostly gravel right now. Next slide. Okay, so existing's on the left. proposed is on the right. So, and I'm probably going to be a little bit out of order, and I apologize in advance, but the building one, the design for that one, again, that's the one that's right behind 91 Spring. And our idea there was first respect the wonderful existing historic house, which is very grand, very ornate, and keep that more in the tradition of how buildings are done behind buildings in Charleston. We have it kind of as thin as we can get it. It certainly is smaller than the main building in footprint. And then we have a very small sort of porch on the front. And when we get to the elevations, I'll kind of talk through that. The building on the right, building 2, is different because 93 Spring, and when we go through the elevations, I'll explain it, but it's a very, well, it's atypical in some ways for Charleston because it's not a single, but it's kind of typical of the neighborhood in that it's kind of an unusual building. It was always a commercial structure. It was Herbert DaCosta's office for a while. It was a firehouse, some sort of meeting hall, I think. And most recently, it's a restaurant on the ground floor. So in this one, I think the key takeaway is we pushed it back as far as we could. And the majority of it, as you can see, is in line or behind the main structure in the front. All right, next slide, please. Really hard to do this on a computer. I can't stand up and point. All right, so here is the landscape design. I'm sorry it's so small, but we are, unfortunately, landscape architect couldn't be here, so I can't get too specific, but I think the short version is we want it to be a really nice space. We don't want it to be just a big, giant area of pavement. We're respecting, again, the main Piazza of 91 to the left there with this lawn. And then we've got some, sort of areas for the residents to use. Next slide. And so the next slide will just show some of the conceptual ideas that the landscape architect has put together. Very Charleston, relatively formal, which I think is in keeping with the main house there. Okay, so next slide shows, and I'll try to speed it up here. So the elevation on the right, on the top is 93 Spring with Spring Street to your right and the proposed building to the left. We're trying our best to follow all the rules. We are lower than the existing height of a 93, and 93 is not a tall building. So there's, that was a major goal to have. The one on the bottom obviously is 91 Spring with the proposed building behind it. And clearly it's subordinate. Next slide. Okay, these are just closer views. So again, on the top, so conceptually the idea for the building at the rear of 91 was to have a very simple vernacular building that responds to the proportions and the style of the main grand house, but without being overly decorative. So it's much simpler, but it's got some similar details here and there. The building for behind 93 Spring, again at the bottom, we felt that one, for a number of reasons. One, its orientation and relationship to the existing building is different because the existing building 93 doesn't have a piazza, doesn't have any porches. And so we felt like it ought to stand on its own and respond a little bit more to sort of the sort of quirky nature of 93. Again, very understated, but pulling on some of those details. Next slide, please. This is just a site section showing the two proposed buildings. You would not see this from the street. Next slide. Floor plans. I don't think we need to go through these. Next slide. Trying to not take too much of your time. So these are you're going to see this, the west elevation there on the right, probably the most, if at all. It's still way back there and tucked behind the main building. Very, very simple. We didn't feel like a full piazza was appropriate. Again, trying to keep it subordinate. Good materials, standing seam metal roof. Looks like I need to pull those dormers down a little bit. We'll do that. Next slide. You can't really see these from the public right of way. Next slide. Okay, so these are the plans for the building behind 93. So this is pushed way, way back in the corner. Next slide. Again, very simple. The massing is very intentional. You know, we did not want to have a piazza because the piazza would be, we don't want to put it on the correct side, which would be west, because it'd be facing nothing. And all the sort of activity is on the other side. We're trying to get all these buildings to sort of work together in terms of how people are going to use them. But we did want to break down the proportions to be more Charleston-like. And so that's why the roof is the way it is. Next slide. Again, you can't really see any of these two from the street. Again, same good materials, metal roof, good windows. Next slide.
And Eddie, you got about a minute left on this one.
Okay, well, almost done. Let's go to the renderings. I think it explains it the best. All right, so this is the view from Spring, obviously, and you can see the proposed building at the rear. And one of the things we tried to do, next slide, Kim. Oh, well, hold on for this one for a second. So 93 Spring is just the building on the right is just again, it's typical of Spring Street. It's this interesting, kind of odd proportioned building, you know, very low slope, gable, you know, no windows hardly at the front. You know, it's just very interesting. So we kind of are playing off a little bit of that without replicating it. Next slide. I'll go quick. I think we only have a couple left. Here's a view that you could maybe see from the street if you stood on a car. Very simple. Next slide. One idea we're trying to do is use the trim color to maybe tie the buildings together a little bit. This view, again, shows the building behind 91 and a little piece of the element of 93's building. Next slide. I think the next few are views you can't see from the street, but they just illustrate the buildings. Again, very simple, very subordinate. And the other building at 93 is actually even lower than the other one. Again, very, very simple. I think that might be the last one. Next one. This is a pure elevation. Again, you won't see this from the street. These are not big, so we wanted to make the rooms a little more interesting. This is getting a little bit ahead, but that to the right there, that portion you see, that's an addition that we're going to be asking for in the next application after this one. Yeah. I think that one's the last one. Yeah. Okay, so that, I hope I didn't confuse everybody, but that concludes our presentation.
Thanks, Eddie. Do we have any, excuse me, it's getting late. Do my fellow board members have any questions for Eddie?
If you don't mind, Eddie, would you just kind of lay it out there, like how many units and parking places are on this, and what zoning requests did you ask for? The whole parcel, I guess I'm asking about.
I can't remember how many units there are.
Okay.
I can't tell you this, Julia. Honestly, it's been a while since we figured all that out. We meet all zoning for parking and for number of units. So none of this is, yeah, all setbacks. We actually got a variance on the setback for building 2 because we wanted to shift it to the west because it was your typical Charleston single, you know, wider setback, but it would have ended up with a dead space. So we pushed that back so it could be behind the building. Gotcha. Yeah, we're good with all zoning stuff. I just can't remember the number of units, honestly.
So many. All right. And then minor question at the building behind 93, is that really wide gable extension at the eave? Is that like an intentional move? I'm just trying to figure that out.
Oh, the rake? A little bit. You know, it's not. It's such a simple little form You know, that's something I've done before. I've just pulled the rake out a little bit further just to give it a little more shadow and depth. It's not super critical, you know, it's just something to give it a little interest.
Thanks.
All right, if there's no more board questions, we'll move on to city staff comments and recommendations. Excuse me.
We have public comment.
Public comment.
We have Anna Catherine Carroll speaking.
Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society is supportive of the height, scale, mass, and architectural direction of Building 1, but feel Building 2 warrants further study. Generally, we feel a more traditional design approach similar to Building 1 should be pursued for Building 2 to better relate to its context, especially given the building's high visibility from Spring Street. Our primary concern is the east-facing enclosed porch element, which is proportionally too wide for a traditionally scaled side porch and overly contemporary in relation to the design of the main body of the house. We would encourage elimination of this element and pursuit of a more traditional approach on the Piazza side, which would also allow the footprint to be more subordinately scaled to the front building. Lastly, we feel the varying window sizes and types on the east elevation of Building 2 are unsuccessful and should be restudied. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna Catherine.
And that's all we have.
All right, now, Kim, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Staff is pleased with Building 1. It's subordinate yet relatable to the primary building. We support the design. The plans detail the information to sufficiently review at the final level. Thus, we recommend conceptual approval with final details to staff for Building 1. Building 2 is conceptually appropriate. However, we have a few design concerns. The west-facing portion presents like an enclosed piazza, and the preservation staff would prefer to see the element detailed differently, so it does not read as such. The east-facing element's interesting, and staff aren't opposed to the concept of the entryway, but we feel that the contrast of these opposing wings could be restructured and the width narrowed slightly. Coordinate the design of the east and west facing elements for a more cohesive design, low slope roof, siding, fenestration, volumetric proportions, width, etc. Staff's recommending conceptual approval with staff comments noted in final review staff.
Thank you, Kim. Eddie, did you have any response or clarification to anything raised by the city staff recommendations or public comment?
Yeah, well, I think they're all good comments. Of course, I disagree with some. Just to respond to a couple things. I mean, certainly Building 1's kind of easy. It's a very simple structure. Building 2, I want to be very clear. We would never propose to have a new building simulate an enclosed porch. That's never the intention. I wouldn't want to have an enclosed porch if it was historic. So the idea is more to have the proportions relate to historic structures without being so, I don't know, basically replicative of a true piazza. I mean, we're not showing a piazza. We don't have openings like a piazza. There's no railing. There's no column. So that was never the intent. It was just really to break the massing up. So I just want to be clear on that. I understand the comments. I disagree. Obviously, we disagree with the approach to make it overly traditional. I mean, looking at this elevation, it's not that radical. We've got a gable roof, and you know, the only sort of radical part is that we've got a sort of large bay there. Again, I think our intention is to let this building sort of stand out on its own, and you know, just as the front building of 93 is kind of an interesting, you know, sort of atypical Charleston building, but typical for the sort of variety that is on King. We're kind of going along with that sort of thought with this building. We don't feel like it's this sort of overly exuberant design. It's just, you know, a little bit more than just what you would see all the time. And I will say, just walking around, there've been lots and lots of rear buildings that have been built all over Charleston. Kind of the tradition has been that they're a little bit more playful a lot of times because they aren't right up on the street. So I appreciate the comments, but obviously we disagree, and hopefully the board will as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Eddie. All right, we'll move into board discussion and a vote.
Can we just go, yeah, there's elevations. So I don't mind starting this off. And I think everyone, public and staff, seems fine with the building behind 91, which I agree is good. And so if we're really talking about this one, I don't have any problem with it being a departure aesthetically from traditional building. But I guess I'm just not quite grasping the concept yet. It strikes me as sort of a background building with the primary form and the secondary form, and then this kind of bold element fused on the east. And then when I'm looking at it in 2D, it's a harder still to kind of grasp, because that cover over the entry porch or the entry of this downstairs unit and the window, like the column falls right almost at the edge of the window when you're looking at it straight on from the street. Yeah, I'm just not quite maybe clear on what the concept is, but I don't really think it's far off from being great. And I, generally think the height, scale, and architectural direction are totally fine. But I hear the comments from staff and the Preservation Society.
I guess, Glenn, my comment about this particular building is that as I'm kind of looking at what is becoming a complex, for lack of better words, there are just a few elements of this building that might be a little foreign to the rest of the complex. And I appreciate the really different architectural look of the front building at 93, the commercial building. I don't know. I feel like it may be this rear building may be introducing a few little elements that aren't necessarily adding to what else is being done here. And I could be wrong about that. I don't hate it. It's not. I think that there are a few pieces of this building that are a bit foreign to the rest of this entire collective of what's going on here with the 82 units or whatever it is.
82.
Glenn, you still going? I'm sorry.
No,
Okay.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. This is Bill. I was just gonna say the building behind 91, I think is nicely detailed. It's positioned very well. I guess you are going to have to lower the dormers down a little bit for your comment. The one over here behind 93. I mean, I would say in concept of the ideas, if you were verbally describing the elements you were introducing here, I don't have any problem with that. I think there are a couple of things though that are throwing me off a little bit. I do think that, and I'm not quite sure if it's done in conjunction with what's driving it, but there seems to be a lot of room above the windows on the second floor, even up to the eave line, and the proportion kind of, I don't know, it just sort of throws me off a little bit. I don't believe there's another room up there. And if I were to verbally describe this, I would say the premise of it sounds good. I think it's down to just maybe some refinement. And I think that's the same point Julia was making. I don't really have a problem with the modern elements on the building. I think those are kind of quirky and fun, and there is a good bit of that going on up in the neighborhood. You know, these large scale windows and things like that. That's kind of become sort of a feature of the Spring Street vibe up there. But I do think it's just some degree of maybe address to the form, basic form of the building, being the height above the windows. I think you've tried to make it simple, which I think is a good thing, but it's almost to the point of being a little boxy. I don't know how to better to describe that. I think you could make it still clean, still simple, but maybe some degree of refinement of that boxiness. But I don't have really a problem with the premise of what you're proposing to do here at all. I think it's just a refinement of the building behind 93, and like I say, I'm good with the other one.
Okay. Fillmore here. I think I'm generally in line. Excuse me a minute. Sorry, I have barking dogs all of a sudden. I'm generally in line, I think, with the other comments. Building one, you know, I think is fine. The only thing, and building two, I think is a little bit unbalanced, but I think that's correctable probably with adjustment. I think height, scale, and mass are okay, and in general architectural direction, I think is okay. My only comment is that I'm not sure whether this, in the bigger scheme of this whole development, whether this building reads more in relation to 93 or whether it reads more in relation to the back area, which seems to be imposed on more by 91. And so the comment that this, you know, that from the Preservation Society that maybe this building should be more traditional, I think has merit, but at the same time, I really don't have any significant objections to this building. I think if, with a little refinement, I think the fenestration on the east elevation, to my eyes, is a little strange. There's a lot going on there with fenestration in differing sizes. And I think there's a little refinement of the entry element that could be done. I'm not going to pretend to make suggestions. That's not my bailiwick. But at conceptual level and height, scale, and mass and general direction, I don't have an issue with it.
I think I'm ready to kind of float a motion and see how it goes. How about a motion for conceptual approval of both with final review by staff of building one and a board comment to refine proportion and details at building two? And, you know, goes without saying it could come back for final, I think. That's my motion.
Did you want to incorporate any of the staff comments into your motion?
I don't think so, other than the two that are just compliments of building, or well, the one that's, no, unless it's maybe, okay, how about comments 1 and 5?
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval of both building 1 and 2 with staff comments 1 and 5. And final review by staff of building 1, and a board comment to refine the detail and elevations as to building 2.
Proportions and details of building 2.
Okay. All right,
This is-
but
I'm sorry, I was going to second it, Lindsay. This is Bill. I would second that. That's okay.
all right. I'll put it to a vote. Fillmore,
Yay in favor?
Glenn,
In favor?
Julia,
Yay in favor.
Bill.
Yay in favor.
The chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Eddie, don't go away yet. Agenda item number 10 is 93 Spring Street. Tim, if you'll give us an overview.
Figure out how to work my computer. All right, 93 is requesting conceptual approval for a 2-story addition to the rear of the historic building. Building's a category 4 in the Canterbury neighborhood, built in 1910 in the Old City. And you can take it away from here, Eddie.
Okay, all right, last one. All right, so I've already talked about 93 Spring a little bit, but here's a photo. Next slide. Again, it's always been from what we can tell, a non-residential building, except for maybe on the second floor more recently. Again, 1910, kind of an interesting building. Next slide. We can skip through these. I think you all know where the site is by now. Yeah, just next slide. Just some, all right, hold on for this one for a second. All right, so at the staff level, we got approval for what is obviously a rear addition that was, it looks like it was several porches at some point that were then infilled. There's no historic fabric left, but it's kind of hard to see. But basically where that sort of trim line is there, you can tell. Yeah, you can tell that and the part below were not historic. So that has been approved. And we're adding an addition sort of from that point on. And I think another element to point out in this slide is that really nice brick wall. My guess is that's something that Mr. DaCosta designed. It's a very Charleston move. And we, of course, wanted to retain that. So next slide. Okay, these are a little hard to read, but the one on the right, I think the key takeaway here is that, you know, we're doing all the BAR rules. We've got a hyphen there, and then we've got a new addition. And again, you can't see anything to the right, which is the west, because there's a building right there where Kim's cursor is or was. But on the no, to the far right. Yeah, there's a building right there. You can kind of see how we've graded it in. So you can't even see anything to the west. You can only see the eastern facade. And again, we have a hyphen and we pulled it back, you know, inset to the original footprint of the building. And you can see kind of there, it's a little tough, but that was, not only did we push it back, but we also tucked it in sort of behind that kind of interesting little garden wall. Next slide. This is just showing what we are taking out. There's not, just for anybody's information, there's not much, if any, historic fabric remaining in this building. Next slide. Okay, so the left is ground floor proposed and the right is second floor proposed. Next slide. Okay, these are existing. Next. Again, you can't see these from the street. Next slide. Okay, so the bottom, really this is the primary point of the review right here, is our addition. So again, we've got a hyphen in between. That's incorrectly called out as cementitious board. That'll be metal in the hyphen with a downspout. And then very simple clad building with a hipped roof. Subordinate, I mean, again, it follows all the rules, very traditional. We didn't feel like a gable made any sense, and I did not think a flat roof would look very good. Next slide.
What's going on, right?
Yeah, well, next one, Kim. Yeah, again, the one on the left is existing, one on the right is proposed. You can't see this from the street. It's just kind of explaining the building. Next slide. And I think we've got some renderings that really help it. Yeah, again, this not visible. You can see the outline of the building that is really on the property line almost. Next slide. This is just showing how that hyphen, the top left is how that hyphen works with the parapet sloping to a sort of a double downspout element. Next slide. This is sideways, but just sort of explaining how the details work. Next slide. Okay. Again, you would not see this. This is not a public view, but it does sort of illustrate how the building works. Very simple. It's a little deceiving because it looks like this is stucco or something, but the idea is that it would be siding similar to what's there now with that little hyphen, which again, I don't think you see the hyphen from the street. Next slide. This is probably the primary sort of BAR view. I think this is it. Next slide. Yeah. Okay, that's my last one for tonight.
Thanks, Eddie. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
This is Bill. I have a quick question for Eddie. So that hyphen, is that copper? Or
no, I don't think the owners would probably not like it if I called it out as copper. It'll be some kind of, I'd like it to be some kind of metal panel that is, we're showing it in a, like a panelized running bond vertical. You know, we've got to work through that detail. I don't, again, I'd like it to be that, and the downspouts would match, you know, all aluminum. We've got to work.
Okay.
I don't know how much you can see it, so we'll probably have some arguments.
That's an open channel gutter you got there?
What's that?
That's sort of an open channel gutter, a U-shaped open channel gutter. Downspout rather, I'm sorry. Right there.
Yeah, it would be a pair.
Oh, it's a pair. Oh, okay. I thought it was an open, like a U channel, you know, open face.
Yeah.
Downspout.
No, it's a pair that are about 2 inches apart, just to give it a little more.
Oh, okay. I was just going to tell you it was really cool, but never mind. Still cool. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, that's really all I had. Thanks.
Any other board questions for the applicant? All right, let's move on to public comment.
We have Anna Catherine Carroll.
Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society was surprised to see that the rear addition of the existing house was approved for demolition at a staff level. Based on our review of the 20th century Sanborn maps, the westernmost portion of the two-story addition appears to date to pre-1902, so we would appreciate any clarification on that point. We are comfortable with the design of the proposed addition, but we do feel it would be simpler and cleaner to pursue putting the addition under a single roof form rather than two, if possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna Catherine. Kim, do we have anyone else speaking from the public?
We don't.
Okay, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations.
Sure. Staff are in support of the sensitive addition, which is subordinate and differentiated. The use of the recess element clearly defines the portion of the new building campaign. We also commend the applicant for removing hardware from the east side of the building. Normally, we would request that the windows remain in place without relocation, but this change is minor, far from view, partially concealed by the chimney and already misaligned. So the staff's recommending conceptual approval, final review by staff.
Thank you, Kim. Eddie, did you want to respond or clarify anything raised by public comment or city staff comments and recommendations?
Yeah, two quick comments. One, I overlooked the fact that we're asking for one window to be shifted about 1.5 feet on that eastern facade. I can show it to you if you want. It's just moving it over. The facade is sort of irregular to begin with, but Kim, we've got a side elevation somewhere that points it out.
Oh,
There it is. All right, so that top one is existing and the bottom one's proposed. You know, we felt it just works better for the floor plan, and we're taking off and sort of restoring that whole facade anyway. And we thought sort of the net gain was a positive, even though we're moving that one window. And again, that facade, as you can tell, is fairly irregular. Just two comments about the Preservation Society. It may have appeared in the Sanborn maps that the footprint was the same, and so I understand that, but I can tell you after walking through it, there was no historic anything there. It was, it had been cobbled together, removed, added on over the years. So I share the concern, but it wouldn't, I mean, Kim can say that, but it wouldn't have been approved at staff if there was a big issue. So there was no historic fabric loss there. I don't really understand the comment about the roofs, but we like the design of the roof, so I would rather not change it. Maybe it's that side, but you can't see that side. So I don't know how else to do the roof and keep it low. It's intentional to keep it low. Is why it's hipped. That's it for my comments.
all right. Thanks, Eddie. We'll move into board discussion and a vote now.
So, I think I'm comfortable with pretty much everything here. Yeah, I think so, and I know that Eddie will clarify all the details before he submits for a final review. I did notice in the wall section, it seems like there's some trim elements indicated in the wall section that you're not showing on the elevations, like a skirt board under the windowsills, which I don't think you intend to have, that sort of thing. But this is conceptual, so I'm fine with it, and I have no problem with the hyphen and the roof form. I think it's nice.
Fillmore here. I agree with Julia. I have no issue with the roof form. I think it's interesting, and the hyphen. I think whatever color the metal is in there is going to be important to the way the little hyphen looks with the downspouts. But I'm fine with it. I think it's nice.
All right, so I'll make a motion for what's the staff's recommendation? Sorry. Okay, conceptual approval with final review by staff.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval with final review by staff. Do I have a second?
Fillmore, I'll second.
Thank you, Fillmore. I'll put it to a vote. Bill?
Yeah, in favor.
Glenn?
Yeah, in favor.
Julia?
In favor.
Fillmore?
Yay, in favor.
The chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thanks, Eddie.
Okay, thanks everybody. Y'all have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.
And I'm recusing now, okay?
Yes, Julia, you are out for the last two applications. So we are now on agenda item number 11, 34 New Street. Kim, you'll give us an introduction, please.
Can I request a quick 2-minute water break?
Yes, you may. And I'm going to do the same. Did I beat Glenn back?
Here.
All right, I think we have everyone here, so we can continue. Agenda item number 11, 34 New Street.
Get there first. All right. Number 11, 34 New Streets, requesting final approval for modifications to existing non-original two-story porch and new porch floor at second level and new railing at first floor. It's category 4 in the Charlestown neighborhood, was built in 1880 in the old and historic district. And here's an aerial for your context and some existing site photos. Looking south, no, just one. Looking south on new and looking north on new. And our applicant has done some really good Sanborn maps. So I'm going to let Erin Lanier take it from here.
Good evening, board members. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
This is Erin Lanier with Julia Martin Architects here tonight on behalf of the owners of 34 New Street, Rita and Jamie McDonald, requesting final approval for modifications to an existing non-original porch at this property. By way of a little background, the McDonalds purchased this home a few months ago, and shortly after doing so, found an older photograph of the house which showed a former two-story porch that had since been removed. They approached us to see if it might be possible to bring a second floor porch back, and after doing some research, we felt like that was a reasonable request, which we're happy to present to you this evening. Tim, I'm going to skip over the existing photos momentarily that are on the next slide and ask you to go to sheet 3 so we can talk about the history first. This house, like Kim said, was constructed around 1880, but it was first mapped by the Sanborn Fire Insurance Company in 1902. And as you can see, at that time and through 1955, there were actually two-story porches on the south elevation of the house. We feel confident this was a different porch than what you see today because at that time, the porch was significantly set back from the front wall of the house, whereas the current porch, which is 2 stories in height, only has 1 level, starts at the very front of the house. As some of you may recall, this home was renovated by the previous owners with the help of Eddie Fava back in 2014. And the photos and elevation at the bottom here show what the existing conditions were at that time. As part of that renovation, they were approved to remove not only the partially infilled porch at the rear, but also the 2 bays of the 2-story porch you can see there in the middle to make way for a new 2-story addition, in addition to modifying several doors that led to the porches and converting those to windows. Kim, if you want to go back to sheet 2. So as you can see, what we have today, while simplified from those previous existing conditions, is significantly different from what we know about the original configuration. Currently, there's a 4-bay porch with 2-story columns, which ties into the circa 2014 2-story addition that somewhat atypically projects behind or beyond rather the outside edge of the porch. A single door remains at the second floor, leading to that non-original balcony, and a single door at the first floor is centered about the 3rd bay. Go back to the next slide. So our design essentially proposes to construct a new porch floor structure at the second floor level within the existing columns, similar to that bit of second floor porch you see in the bottom left-hand photograph. The balcony, of course, would go away, but all other elements would remain as is, with the new porch extending the full length, just like the first floor. We feel like the benefit of this approach is that conceivably it could be reversed in the future if someone were so inclined. Next slide. These are some precedent images that have informed our approach to the detailing, which would retain the full height columns, allowing them to read, and then have the porch floor engaging at the back side. Next slide. Here's the existing and proposed first floor plan. The only real changes at this level would be the addition of new railings to match those proposed for the second floor. There are no railings currently, but the owners would like to have them for safety reasons and to give the 2 floors a more uniform appearance. Given the window locations at the 2014 edition, you'll see that the rail will need to terminate at a simple newel post at the far end of both floors. Next slide. The second floor, we have the new full-length porch and railings, and again, all fenestration will remain just as it is now. Next slide. Here's our existing and proposed west or street elevation. Next slide. Here's our south elevation. A couple of things to note, we would add shutters to the door at the second floor to match the first floor level, and also 2 sconces up there to match the first floor as well. Proposing just a simple railing with a round handrail that's similar to an existing railing at the balcony. Next slide. And I'll just end with this section. Through the new porch and some images of the existing wall sconces they would like to replicate, as well as a simple white fan that they'd like to install at both levels. That's all I have, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thanks, Erin. Do we have any board questions for the applicant? All right, we'll move on to public comment. Kim, do we have anyone speaking from the public?
We have Anna Catherine Carroll.
Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. Preservation Society appreciates the applicant reaching out to us on this project and would like to offer our support of this approach as an improvement to the current atypical porch configuration. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna Catherine. Do we have anyone else speaking from the public, Kim?
No, we don't.
All right, then I'll turn it over to you for city staff comments and recommendations.
Thank you. This is a wonderful project and we look forward to seeing the Piazza reestablished. Staff's recommending final approval.
Thank you, Kim. Erin, did you have any response to the public comment or staff comments?
No, thank you.
All right, I'll open it up for board discussion and vote. This is Lindsay. I think this is a really nice addition, or I don't even know if it's addition. It's going back to the original fabric. I'm in support of this.
This is Glenn. I have no concerns. I mean, I've always been intrigued by this being different and atypical, and I've always actually kind of wondered, how did it happen or why did it happen? But that doesn't mean there's anything about the current condition that is sacred. And so I think this is nicely detailed, and I'm in support of it.
Fillmore, I agree.
This is Bill. I agree, and I would go ahead and float a motion if that's okay, you guys. I'll make a motion for final approval and staff's comments. That is wonderful. So I'll make with staff's comment.
We have a motion on the floor for final approval with staff comments. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Glenn. Put it to a vote. Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yeah, in favor.
Glenn?
Stay in favor.
Chair votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously. And Erin, I'll assume you're presenting the last item on the agenda as well. We are on agenda item number 12, which is 62 Cannon Street.
62 Cannon is requesting conceptual approval for renovation to existing historic house, including the reconstruction of rear porch and the new construction of a 2-story commercial addition at the rear. The building's a category 4 in the Cannonboro neighborhood. It was built in 1886 in the Old City District. Now here's an aerial. The building is on the north side of Cannon Street. And some existing site photos. Looking east on Cannon and looking west. And again, Erin's put together some great Sanborn maps, so I won't dwell on these. I'll turn it over to you, Erin.
All right, I'm just gonna point out, we're actually I don't think any of those were quite us. It's 3 sister houses that are right here. So we're the farthest to the east. But I'll go through all that here in a second. So Erin Lanier is Julia Martin Architects here on behalf of Calder and Chauncey Clark, the owners of 62 Cannon. This structure is one of 3 sister houses, as I said, on Cannon Street near Felix. And it's been occupied for many years as the owner's office on the first floor of the residence above. The scope of this project is to renovate the historic structure and restore it to a single family configuration with construction of a new commercial space via a linked addition proposed to the rear of the property. Next slide. So here's some context photos just to give you a better sense of our immediate surroundings. The three sisters are shown there at the top left. I think their addressing has changed over time, which makes it a little bit confusing. But our house is the tan one on the right, which has Calder sign there on the porch. Immediately adjacent to the house is a common private alley, which is shared by the three properties and provides access to parking at the rear of each. The bottom left-hand photo is the opposite side of Cannon Street, which is also a mixture of commercial and residential structures. And the bottom right is an aerial view of our property and its neighbors. And here I would just kind of draw your attention to the additions and dependencies of all the adjacent neighbors, as well as the small porch roof at the rear of 62 Cannon, which will be removed and reconstructed. Next slide, please. These are some existing photos of number 62, which is arguably the most intact of the three sisters. We're proposing minimal changes to the exterior other than to replace a few non-historic windows with proper sashes to match existing, and then removal of the non-historic stairs and porch materials at the rear elevation, neither of which is visible from the street, but will certainly improve the property. As you'll see from the Sanborn maps in a minute, there has historically been several iterations of a rear porch on this building, but it's clear that what's there now is all modern pressure-treated material that extends beyond the historic footprint. The roof of this porch appears older, but we believe it too was a replacement given the condition and detailing, the way it clips the original window trim, and in comparison to the roof seen on the other two sisters. Next slide. Here are some additional site photos showing the existing gravel parking on the property and again, the additions and dependencies on the properties to the east and west. That large pink addition there directly to our west. And then to the east is a separate dependency that's there on the other side of that. Next slide, please. So here are Sanborn maps and the survey card, which shows the rear porch with three slightly different footprints through the years. As I mentioned, what exists currently is different from all three, but we're proposing to essentially reconstruct the rear porch to match what you see in 1902, incorporating traditional materials and detailing. Next slide, please. These are some precedent images for the new linked addition, and we're attempting to convey both a sense of materials and form. As you'll see in a minute, the addition connects to the main house via a covered walkway, and we're proposing masonry as the primary facade material, not only to differentiate it from the historic, but also to give the addition its own identity, which we'd like to reflect its use as a commercial space. Next slide. Here is our existing and proposed site plans. On the left, you can see the larger rear porch and stair, which will be reduced to the footprint shown at the right. And then the new addition will connect via a covered portico type element to the main house, such that one would be able to walk from the parking area beyond the addition through that covered portico into the private courtyard and enter the main house from the rear porch, or walk along the side yard to the front. The addition, which is intended to be a small office or retail space, addresses the common alley with doors on the east facade where you see some brick paving here on the site plan. Next slide. The existing and proposed floor plans are largely referencing interior modifications, including reopening the original stair. But you can see the changes to the rear porch, which will be reconstructed, as I said, in that 1902 footprint. Next slide, please. Second floor is really kind of the same, no changes to the exterior outside of a window or two that will get replaced in the reconstruction of the rear porch. Next slide. So here's the plan for the new two-story commercial space at the rear. The connector is one story and serves to basically provide a proper entrance to the rear courtyard, as well as privacy from the commercial space or others that have to use that common alley. And we're showing 10 feet between the addition and the main house, both as a means of fire separation, but also because we like how it creates a more respectful connection and relationship between the two structures. As drawn, the east side of the addition steps back approximately 5 feet from the east elevation of the historic residence, which sits right on the property line. And the west side of our addition is tucked inside the edge of the cantilevered porch at the front. So that being said, we know the Preservation Society would like to see the addition move a little closer to the east, so there's less of a projection behind the cantilevered porch. We have studied this and think we could shift everything about 2 feet and still save ourselves a small landing at the entry to the commercial space and have room for the shutters of those doors to swing open within the property lines. Next slide. The floor plan for the second floor, which is really the same footprint and everything as the first floor. Next slide. So moving to our elevations, we've got the existing south elevation, which faces Cannon, followed by the proposed elevation at Cannon and a proposed elevation at the new addition, which would just be seen from the courtyard. Our addition is 2 volumes, and that smaller volume where their stair is located peeks through the cantilevered porch slightly. But these houses are actually closer together than typical, so it would be really minimally visible, we feel. And again, even less so if we shift the addition 2 feet to the east, as I just described. You can start to get a sense of the materials here. We're proposing that the main volume of the addition be a light colored masonry, probably a slurry brick. And then all the windows, doors, and trim, as well as the stair volume, would be a darker color that would help it further recede in this view. Next slide. Here's our existing and proposed east elevation, which abuts the common alley. Again, we'll fix a window or two at the historic mass, but otherwise we're focused on the rear. You can see our 1-story connector and the commercial addition beyond. We're proposing the connector be a simple standing seam gable roof over painted louvered screening with an operable door there in the center. Then the 2-story volume is a masonry veneer of slurry brick with a slightly contemporary windows and operable shutters up the windows and doors. The roof is tucked between masonry parapet walls and would be a standing seam copper or galvalume to match the connector. We're in an X zone here, so we're able to keep everything fairly low to the ground, and we pulled the eaves down to be really subordinate to the historic structure. Our goal here is to have the configuration and orientation of the addition, as well as the high quality of the materials, be reflective of the commercial identity of the structure. The historic house has really lovely detail that we want to be respectful of, and the choice of masonry and standing seam feel appropriately elevated and worthy of this property to us without pretending to be historic or look like a typical rear addition that's just an extension of residential living space. Next slide, please. At the rear of the main house, you can see the existing and proposed rear porch, which really improves the view of historic residence, even if hidden. And then at the addition, we are showing a larger contemporary window that will help bring plenty of light into the space, despite our keeping the fenestration pretty limited on 2 sides of this structure. Next slide.
Erin, you've got about a minute left.
Got it. At the west elevation, our stair volume transitions to a boral V groove, and here we're relatively close to the neighbor, so the fenestration is limited to 3 transom windows above the stair. Next slide. And I'll just end with our 3D views to give you a better sense of the massing and visibility and our general color direction we're envisioning for the addition. That's all I have. I'd have to answer any questions.
Thank you, Erin. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant? All right, so we'll move on to public comment. Kim, it looks like we may have Anna Catherine speaking.
Yes, we do. Anna Catherine.
Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We really appreciate the applicant reaching out to us on this project. We feel this proposal exemplifies a positive approach to site planning and appreciate the relationship of the addition to the main house in height and scale. The proposal to reconstruct the rear porch is also positive. With regard to the addition, we encourage the applicant to study options to better conceal the west-facing bay inboard of the cantilevered porch on the main house, as Erin mentioned, and we really appreciate the applicant's willingness to explore shifting the footprint toward the east property line to mitigate visibility. As this project moves forward, we also encourage continued study of materials to ensure the addition appropriately relates to the property and neighborhood context. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna Catherine. Do we have anyone else from the public speaking, Kim?
No, we don't. So
you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
I sure will. We have no objections to the project and feel it's a sensitive, thoughtful, and well-designed addition. So we're recommending conceptual approval with final review by staff.
Thank you, Kim. Erin, did you want to respond to any of the staff comments or the public comments?
I will just say we always appreciate the Preservation Society's input and suggestions. We're happy to study alternative materials if the board feels strongly about it. That being said, we really like the masonry. We looked at the surrounding context and felt like the majority of the commercial spaces in Canterbury are masonry. That includes, everything from the building at the corner of Cumming and Cannon, where J. Stark was located, to Sugar Bake Shop, YMCA that's right across the street here, and several other buildings just in even our immediate vicinity. We feel like this little structure can contribute to the streetscape, just like all the other structures do, without having to be a typical residential addition to fit in. There certainly isn't an exact prototype for what we're doing here, but we feel like this is similar paradigm to, some of the additions that got added to buildings in this neighborhood in the early 20th century, where you've got kind of two distinct characters to, commercial addition on the front versus the residential building in the back. We certainly would never put anything on the front, but we think it can still be successful and provides character in this neighborhood.
Thank you, Erin. All right, let's move on to board discussion and a vote.
This is Bill. I'll go ahead and jump in. I agree with staff's comments and the comments of the Preservation Society. It may be materiality, though. I think there's some good things going on here. So I don't have as big of an issue with materiality. I would say that part, but I do think that shift, that 2-foot shift that the applicant offered, I think would help. So I would be encouraged to support this application with that 2-foot shift, as staff recommended.
That was Anna Catherine.
And can we clarify that shift would be eastward? Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm comfortable with the shift. I'm not as passionate about it because I think the tightness between those buildings, between this being the more eastward of the three, I think you really get a pretty limited view back there. I actually used to own this building, and these are three great little, well, they're not little, but three buildings that are just really cool. And I think the proposal is sensitive, and I'm in favor of it.
So Glenn, real quick, were you thinking that shift then, because of the tightness of the context there, is not as critical? In other words,
yeah, I mean, I don't see it as being all that critical, Bill. I mean, I guess I'm looking at her design with the fold of those are shutters on that east facing wall of the new building. Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the swing of door. Well, I mean, I don't know that those would actually be closed, but there is a swing shown on there. Yeah, I mean, maybe I have no opposition to the 2-foot shift. I'm just saying that I think that when you look between these two between 62 and 64, I don't know that building is all that offensive, but at the same time, if the owner of 64 was asking for a shift, then that would certainly be a lot more case to move it.
yeah. And I guess what I was wondering too is if the other part of it is there's that common alleyway and, the light and air on that side as well. So, contextually, if it is not as visible, and I definitely think it's not going to be super visible, I would go with, I guess the building, Glenn, just as well as anybody. Whatever your conclusion of that would be from a site planning standpoint, I'm ready to support and make a motion, but I just didn't. I would kind of key off whatever conclusions you guys made about that part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have. I'm just looking. When we go back to in person, Kim, are we allowed to pull up Google Maps?
And also,
yes.
while that's going on, Glenn, also I'm looking at that maneuverability of parking space 1. So that kind of actually facilitated much better with the current position of the building.
Yeah,
So,
and I guess I don't want them to give up that little bit of alleged planting room to get more dead space in the back. But hey, maybe there's a happy medium of, does it move 6 or 12 inches over for a little more breathing room per Preservation Society, I'm certainly fine with that.
Okay. Well, Fillmore, I don't know if you have anything else.
Fillmore here. If you're talking, that's moving the building 2 feet, it's still going to be proud of the building in front. And I don't know, it looks like you've got maybe, what do you think, Lynn, maybe 6 feet in front of that building on the east?
I doubt that. Aaron, can you elaborate?
I believe we have about 5 feet, so that was my thinking, and that we could move it to and still have about a 3-foot landing. And also, as I believe Bill said, like any further than that, we're starting to really make it difficult to pull into that parking spot at the rear.
Yeah, I think having that little bit of green space there to create an entrance to that building down that kind of narrow alley is, I think it's kind of nice. And I'm not sure that moving it a foot achieves much visually on the west side. So I think I'm okay with where it is. I mean,
Well, I would actually support a motion for it as is. But if the architect sees any need for a bit of an eastward shift, I would be completely comfortable with that.
Yeah, I think we would maybe we could just say we could have approve it as is. Was the recommendation final, Kim?
Conceptual.
Final review.
Okay, with final review by staff. Okay. I'd be willing to go ahead and float that motion for conceptual approval with final review by staff. And staff's comment is just another good one. So.
All right, we have a motion for conceptual approval with final review by staff and staff comments. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Glenn. I'll put it to a vote. Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yay in favor.
Glenn?
Yay in favor.
Chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Aaron.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
We have come to the end of our agenda. Do I have Bill, were you going to say something? Or
I was just going to tell Kim, I'm not going to be attending the next meeting. I'm actually going to have a vacation for the first time in 2.5 years. So.
Wow, good for you.
Nope.
Yeah.
Bill, I reserved that before you did.
What? You already did?
That's okay. That's why we have 2 alternates.